Anna,
We're on. We're live.
we are
Hi.
live. How are you doing?
I'm great. I'm great. How are you?
I'm doing well. You're all the way in Australia. So I think that we need to start by I need to let everybody know how this just went down and how we
Yeah.
almost because so Anna is checking in. We're in Australia.
Melbourne.
Okay. All right. All right.
Melbourne,
So right as we in the States say,
as
uh,
you say. Yes.
yeah. So it's Friday for you.
Yes.
Okay,
I'm
so
in the future.
you're in the future and it's Thursday over here. So as we were preparing the episode, we talked about times and everything like that. And for whatever reason, I got confused because I had it scheduled for tomorrow, which would be my time, 15. Your time would be like 10:15 a.m. Okay,
Yeah, Saturday morning.
perfect.
Yeah.
Great. That's all great. So I'm at the gym today and I'm training. And as I'm training, I just jot down little ideas that I have. And so as I'm in my set, I'm writing down a question that I wanted to ask you. And then I, for whatever reason, it just kind of dawned on me. I'm like, wait a minute. Like, future, she's in the future. That means it's Friday now for her. That means this podcast is happening in 10 minutes and I'm at the gym right now. So I texted you and you were super cool about everything. And you're like, oh, don't worry. So then I'm like running back, getting all the stuff squared away. I'm like, all right, like everything I had planned, let's just ditch that. Like we're working on the fly right now. And then you messaged me and you're like, Zoom is downloading. Apparently, it needs an update. Like so,
it decides it needs to update like right now.
So that's how it works. Though we're both coaches and we're both like helping people, and but meanwhile we're like
just can't
technology,
get our own
like
shit
it's
together.
not working
No.
for us. So I am
We're like
super.
swans on the surface. It's just like all smooth sailing, but then underneath we're like,
Yeah, yeah. Oh,
that's
okay.
basically
So
me in a nutshell.
I do want to tell you like a funny story about that too before we get into things. So this was in 2020 and it was for my show season and I was competing in bodybuilding. And I was living in Austin. Right now I live in Indiana. And so I was living in Austin, Texas for a couple of years. But when I was competing, my show was in Chicago. So I was just perfect. Come home for a little kind of vacation, combine everything, go see family, go see friends, and then hit the show and no drama. It's gonna be perfect. All right. So I get home and I'm peaking, everything like that. This is peak week, right? So I'm like doing all my stuff. I'm preoccupied. And I get a message because this is Friday night. So the show is on Saturday. And I get a message and it's from the promoter of the show. And he's like, are you checking in or what? And I was like, checking in. I was like, I didn't know that this particular check-in was mandatory. I mean, we had spoken and it kind of whatever, but he was like, yeah, no, like it's mandatory. And this was in Chicago. And I'm like, dude, I'm in Indiana right now. Like, like, can I check in tomorrow when I get there? Like what? Like,
can I FaceTime you?
Yeah, no. And he, you could tell he was like not happy about it. And so
yeah,
he sent me a message and then he just didn't say anything. And so for like a while, so
I'm never good.
Yeah, right. So I'm like thinking, I'm like, oh my God, I like what if I can't compete tomorrow? Like I just did all of this, peaked. I'm literally peaking. And like, what's the worst thing for peaking? Stress. Like, stress. So I'm at my dad's house. And I go downstairs. He's like, I go, I might not be able to compete tomorrow. And he's like, what? Why? I'm like, well, apparently there was a mandatory check-in, which I didn't know was mandatory, but I guess it was in the like overly long pamphlet that they sent me. I'm not going to lie. That thing was like way too long. And when you're like dieting, you're like, yeah, that's fine. I'll see you there.
Yeah. Just give
So
me the cliff notes and
yeah,
sweet.
yeah, it's like, you got the meeting at this thing, you got this at this, check-ins
I've got
here.
about this much brain power. Use it
Exactly.
wisely.
You're doing you're just like surviving at that point, and you're just like focused on, let me like perform, like let me just like come in at my best, and the rest I'm not too worried about. I've never had this happen before. And then so he just like ghosts me for a while. And I'm even talking to Cliff. I'm like, because Cliff's going, Cliff and I are going there together. I'm like telling him, I'm like, dude, the promoter's pissed. He might not let me compete. He's like, all right, well, let me know what happens. And so he ends up getting back to me at like midnight or whatever. So I'm like staying up, like waiting to know like what's going on. Cause I couldn't just like go to sleep. And he hit me up and was like, can you be here like extra, or be here at like, like 7? I was like, done deal, pal. I'll see you in the morning. And then I went there and they did everything. He checked in. He's like, he goes, and if you win, like you could just drug test after you win. Because they were doing all the
So
testing.
this was like a registration that you had to go to.
Yes. And it was,
so that was like weigh in and
there was no weigh in, but everyone tested and everything like that. So like urine samples and everything. And so he goes, if you win, he goes, just don't leave because you gotta like do it there. And I won. And I won. And I took first place. And so he like, and then actually he apologized too. He was like, I was being a bit of a dick. Sorry. These like things cause a lot of stress. And I was like, I was late. Don't worry about it. Water under the bridge, no big deal. So that was my experience, like 2020, like thinking,
oh my God,
I was going to compete. But for a minute there, I was thinking like, oh man, I'm not going to, I might have an issue here. Have you ever had anything like that happen?
Oh,
like look, a last minute, like crazy thing, like anything like last minute, like chaos before a show?
No last minute chaos. See, I'm a neurotic over planner. So I've already booked stuff like 12 to 24 months out. So no, look, I've never had anything like that happen as such. I guess I've had more challenging preps. I think my most recent peak week, I think I nearly sent my coach insane because during peak week, I managed to book 9 photo shoots.
Yeah, you do a lot of photo shoots. Like I always wonder how you're doing all those photo shoots while you have the show coming right up. Because I'm like, she's got to be dying right now.
Stop.
No, because each shoot you got to do makeup, you got to do hair, you got to do your tan, you got to like, manipulate your body, like all these different things. And then you got the show coming up. So I've always wondered that about like how you do that.
So that was years ago, back when I first started competing. I met a world-renowned male fitness model, Obi DK. You may have heard of him. He was huge back in the magazine days. He's had more.
Probably
covers,
if I saw him, I would probably.
Yeah. So he's from the US, but he was out here in Australia, and he was actually emceeing the competition that I was competing in, and I met him backstage and got to talking to him and asked him, look, what advice would you give to somebody that's trying to make it in the fitness industry? How what do I do with all of this? Like, yeah, competing's cool and all, but how do I try to help build a career here? And he said, look, if some simple advice that I would give you is whenever you compete, whenever you're in shape, do as many photo shoots with as many different photographers, with as many different looks as you possibly can, because then you've always got content. Now, this was in the days back before Instagram was really even a thing. Right. So 2013, I think. Oh God, I don't think I even had an Instagram account at this point. Maybe I just started one. I don't know. It wasn't as big as what it was now. But so this was more in the magazine days, right? So I was, my goal was to try and get a cover and start getting features and write-ups and that sort of thing. And he said, just do as many photo shoots. Whenever you're in shape, work with as many different people, make connections, get as many different looks as possible. Because obviously through those connections, and they talk to other people, and that's how you kind of get a foot in the door. And when you do finally get that opportunity, you can go, here's my portfolio. and away you go. So that just always stuck. And
it's such good advice.
yeah, well, I don't know. I think I take it to another level. I don't know
You
many
do,
other.
but like in terms of like what you produce, like you always do have content. When you're off season, you always have content. Like you, which will, I think that's going to make for a great conversation for our topics today, because when you're taking pictures like that, first off, when you're dieting, I know you don't want to be doing that. Like I know that that's hurting. Like that has to, it's like the last thing you want to do is be like taking pictures on Instagram when you're just in the trenches of a hard prep. Like if people who don't compete don't know how hard that is, you barely have energy to do your daily day-to-day, and even mentally it's exhausting to go and
you want
to
to get into the gym, you want to get it done, you want to get out, you don't want to be taking a bunch of selfies, videos. I mean, I get into the habit of filming my sets all the time anyway. Yes, for content, but I actually use it to keep myself accountable. I use it to look at my form, my tempo, my range, and then I'm able to, so say, let's use a hack squat, for example. So say I start on, a certain amount in week 1, and then by week 6 to week 8, I've hit like a new PB. I can go back to week 1 and I've got the videos in the exact same position, and I put them side by side, and I can compare, have I actually gotten stronger or am I just getting sloppy? Because you can put them side by side and you actually see, like, okay, am I descending at the same cadence? Am I coming to a dead stop at the bottom? Am I using momentum? Are my reps speeding up? So I actually use it for that. Plus, it's also handy for clients who ask, hey, how do I do this exercise? You can just go, well, here's one I prepared earlier. Flick it straight through. But so I digress. So going back to in prep.
That's okay, by the way. So like you can
thing.
like digress, go down like that, like what you just said.
I will.
All that,
I'll have
like
tangents.
like I think that there's a huge amount of value in what you just said, and I even think that lends itself to what we're talking about today, which we will get into before you kind of make your way back. But the level of detail that goes into what you do and the physique that you have, that's a lot of what we're going to talk about today, is all of the different cues and the measuring and monitoring, and just, I don't want to use the word obsessive because that has like a negative, there's like a negative word connotation to that. And I don't think that it's a negative thing. I think it's obsessive in like a fun way, like a great way. Like that's what you need to do. So I don't want to like use that word in like a negative
data way. It's data collection is the way I see it.
So go ahead and finish your point, and I'll go ahead.
Yeah, well, going back to peak week just gone. Yeah, so I managed to cram in 9 photo shoots that week, and
9 photo shoots that week.
The biggest challenge was filling me out. I had one day where I had over 400 grams of carbs, and which for me is, I'm like 5'2". My stage weight is around like 56 kilos, or what would that be in pounds? Double it. What's that, like 130, I think?
128?
Let's say 56 times 2.2. Oh, 123. I was way off.
Okay. Yeah.
Anyway.
That's what Google's for. Plug it in.
Just a calculator.
Yeah.
So I'm quite small, compact. So yeah, he had me on like 400 grams of carbs for just one day, and I still woke up lighter the next day. He was like, Anna, I cannot fill you out. Can you please just sit down and not move? I'm like, I just got to get through these last couple, and then day before,
because you're pumping up for these photos. Like you're doing like pumping up, right?
Look, yes and no. I mean, it depends on the shoot. If it's a gym shoot, then like a little bit. A lot of the reason why I tend to shoot in peak week is so I don't have to do a lot of manipulation and things for the shoots. My primary focus is for the show,
right?
And the shoots look, those finer details, they get missed anyway. Half of it all gets airbrushed out. So I'm not overly concerned. So long as the shape is there, yeah, you want definition, and it's fun to catch like the veins and all like the craziness and everything. But those finer details I feel can be wasted on photo shoots. So my primary focus in peak week is always the show.
The show.
And I just know that during peak week, as you're peaking, yeah, like you're looking pretty gnarly. So let's capture that. And then you've got more photo shoots the day after the show where you're nice and full and, you know. But yeah, so the biggest challenge this peak week was actually filling me out. Hang on. Oh, go. Sorry. Jake's waving at me.
It's no problem. No problem at all.
We might edit that.
Nope, we're keeping everything in. No.
All good.
Get the dogs in here.
The trio have just left.
That's the best stuff.
Yeah. Yes, welcome to my chaotic life.
That's what people want to see. People want to see the dogs running around in the background and the chaos.
Yeah, so this peak week was interesting, but hey, we got there. We got the result that we came for. So that was my first WBFF win, and yeah, I definitely looked the best I'd ever looked. Yeah, it was great. So it all came together.
Yeah.
But I've never had any, I guess, last minute rushes where I've nearly missed something or nearly missed a flight. I'm misorganized 101.
You know what? So... And that worked out for this thing too, because also, and I hope you don't mind me sharing, but you said if I have any questions, you use the words, I like to prepare, go ahead and flick those on over. and I laughed at the go ahead and flick those on over because I thought that was just funny. And then I did because normally, see, you and I are very different in this way that, like, if I have a podcast on Friday, on Thursday night, that's when I'm coming up with the questions. If I have a flight to catch, I'm not packing the night before. I'm packing the morning of. Like, I'm just throwing shit
live on
the
edge.
I live on the edge.
It's giving me like heart palpitations just thinking about it.
Yeah, like, and I have missed flights before, and there are things that, like, it works 99% of the time. I tend to work good. Like, let's say I have a best man speech. Guess when that thing's getting written? not
I'm gonna guess during the ceremony. Yeah.
And I'll make like bullet points, and then those are my guide, and then I just speak from the heart, and it goes. So, but
that works for you.
It works for me. That's the way I roll. But you said, go ahead. You like to prepare. So I came up with the questions a little bit early, and thank God, because of how things played out for today, and because of how I mixed up the times, I would have been all on the fly. And a lot of times I don't like to go all on the fly because I at least like to have like some points that I think will give
just some structure. Yeah.
Some structure. So we're not just rambling. And then also, like, I think like the questions evoke answers, and those answers I think a lot of people will get value from. So I got to give you an introduction here, because you're a huge deal in our industry. So Anna McManamey. Yeah.
McManamey, yes.
McManamey. Okay, I got your name right. So I mean, you do a ton. So you're a fitness model, cover model, competitor, coach, you own Reform Health and Performance, fitness competitor, judge. I mean, what am I missing? Like, what else do you do? A ton, right? Like, you
sausage dog mom.
Sausage dog mom. But like, we've been connected online for a while now, and
yeah,
I've always respected the hell out of you, because you do a great job as a coach. In fact, when I wasn't coaching, I was referring clients to you.
You did.
Yeah. I always respected you, your knowledge. You live and breathe this. And so where you and I align, because you and I are very, very similar in a lot of ways, in that we do this stuff year in, year out, off season, on season, it never stops. You know, like the grind never stops. It's work, but it's not a grind. It's harder for us not to do this stuff. And when I was thinking about like this came to me like immediately, like what should we talk about? I really think that it's important for people to know, like when you're doing things at, we'll just call it like the extreme end. Like when I say extreme, I just mean like you and we want the full potential out of our physiques. That's what we're going for. Optimize everything, every nuance, we're going to eke every little bit out of this experience because that's just what we love and that's what we're passionate about. And so I think that for people to hear what goes into that, when they see a physique, like when you go to Instagram and you see you and in your prime and you're up there, like what goes behind that? So when I'm like competition lean and doing my thing, what goes behind that? And so that's what a big thing that we're going to talk about. And then we'll talk about some like post pre-contest strategies, and we'll kind of combine everything together. So I've been really excited about this also because when you coach people who are not looking to do that, like they're looking to lose weight, they're looking to make it a sustainable, healthy lifestyle. And for us, like sustainable is everything. There's nothing we're not going to do. But for the general public, that comes in terms of, you know, it's a lot, like on a scale of 1 to 10, you know, that might be at like a 3. So if we're at a 10, you know, that their happy place might be in a 3. So I think that a conversation around the differences in those lifestyles, I think it's just important for people to know. I really don't think people fully understand like what goes into it. So like, why don't we talk about like what goes into it? So like, what are some things like, let's talk about mindset. Let's talk about nutrition. Let's talk about training. I mean, you brought up something that was already like in hugely important. Like you're videoing your lifts so you can monitor and self-critique your form. So that way you compare it and see where you can improve. I mean, people aren't doing that.
No, but this is the difference, right? When you're looking for optimal and getting the absolute best out of your physique, then these are the little things that matters. It's all in the 1%ers, because it's those little 1%ers that add up to a big percentage at the end. But yeah, I mean, it really comes down to goals and values, right? I talk about this a lot with my clients, and someone who is a competitor, like someone like you or I, bodybuilding is probably number 1 in terms of our goals and values in life, what we value most. So doing the little things like videoing your sets, not missing your training sessions, meal prepping, weighing out your food, those little things that they don't feel like a chore for us because it's all just part of the process, right? We're happy to do those little things because that's where our values lie. But for someone who comes to you that just wants to get healthier, wants to lose a bit of weight, wants to feel good in a bikini for summer, bodybuilding or fitness and health may not necessarily be their number 1. It might be number 3, it might be number 4. Their kids are their number 1, or their career is their number 1. So the challenge there is finding that balance between, okay, well, how can we structure a plan that's going to fit in with your lifestyle rather than you having to adjust your lifestyle to fit my plan or my agenda.
Yeah, because if you threw your plan, if you're all right, so you're getting your client ready to start and they're all motivated, they're going to start, perfect time, it's New Year's, they're just trying to feel their best to lose a couple pounds, and you send them what you're doing, you're just not even going to get a response. They're going to be freaked
That'd be
out.
Like, no.
Right. And it probably took you some time to get there too, because we all
started
somewhere. From zero.
Absolutely.
Right?
Yeah.
Like your
Absolutely.
before and after, like your like main before and after, where you always show like your before when you started, it always blows my mind. Like it always blows my mind that was you at the time.
Here's the thing about that. Here's the thing about that before photo. So that was right before my first ever competition prep. So mentally, I'd already made that switch to I will do whatever it takes to reach this goal.
You'd eat dirt.
So I'd already been meal prepping for a number of years. I was already I was a absolute gym junkie. So I grew up as a competitive athlete. I was a gymnast and a dancer. My mum was an athlete. She ran in the Commonwealth Games. So we just came from a very competitive, sports-focused family. So we, quote unquote, my mum said to me when I was a kid. So I went through this phase where I became obsessed with ice hockey, right? Random, because ice hockey is like not even a thing here in Australia. But we went to go see an NHL game while I was in the States once, and I just loved it. Anyway,
what did you love about it? Were you just like loving people checking people, like the aggression and like the violence in the sport? Like what did you love about it?
I think it was the skill on the ice. It was the fast pace. But it was just the atmosphere as well. I was like, oh my God, I want to be a part of this. Yeah. I want to do this. So I came back to Australia and so immediately started looking at where I'd be able to play ice hockey. I even pulled out my old rollerblades and was practicing around. We had a tennis court and would just do laps round and around the tennis court, teaching myself backward skating and crossovers. Like I was nuts. Yeah. This is how I spent my school holidays. And my mum turned to me and she said, don't be ridiculous, because unless you're going to be national champion at it, don't bother.
Damn.
Righto, Mum.
Damn, Mom.
So that was, look, I mean, I was at the peak in my dance, gymnastics.
So it was like either be the best or don't even do it at all.
Well, I think what she meant by that was like, you're a national champion at what you're doing. Why would you risk that to go skate around an ice rink and potentially lose all your front teeth and break every bone in your body? Yeah. When you're so good at this, I think, that's what she meant. Yeah. But it came across as, all right, well, unless I'm going to be national champion at it, I guess I just don't bother. So that's just kind of been my mentality towards everything. I'm either the best or it's like, nah.
You're all in, okay. Right? Like
I'm either all in or just no.
Do you have an addictive personality?
Not really. Not really. Like I've never been much of a drinker, never touched drugs in my life. I guess maybe I've had a background of eating disorders and whatnot. So has that addictive personality come out in that respect? Maybe, but I wouldn't see myself as having an overly addictive personality. Maybe at times in my life, I think I'd be more vulnerable to that. But certainly not now. I don't see myself as having an overly addictive personality. I think I'm able to, whether that just comes with age and maturity and just being better self-awareness. There's kind of, I don't know, unless you're talking about the gym. you take bodybuilding away from me and then that might be another discussion.
Bodybuilding is one of those things. Like I have an addictive personality, and what I mean when I say an addictive personality is like when I like something or get into something,
you go
I get into it. And it could be anything. So like music, like I get into music and I get into learning how to make it and learning all the nuances and researching it and thinking about it. It lives in my headspace. So I'm thinking about it. So bodybuilding, I always knew I wanted to be a bodybuilder. Like when I first started, I didn't know how I was going to do it, but I knew that's what I wanted to do. And it wasn't like a straight line or a straight shot. It was like you have learning from all the wrong people and doing all these different things that
we should talk about that.
Yeah.
All those lessons.
Yeah. Like, and don't you think like some of the best lessons come from making those mistakes, especially like
absolutely.
Yeah.
And I say it year on year, every success, every failure, there is always something that you can learn and draw from that. 100%. Because we've all had hardships, we've all had challenges. I don't think I've ever had a perfect prep. No one's ever had a perfect prep. There's always something that happens, right? But it's in overcoming those challenges that you learn something more about yourself, or you level up in one way or another. For me, so again, this most recent prep, 1 month in, I did my knee. I'm about to go in for knee surgery number 3.
I saw that. I wanted to talk about that too, so I'm glad you're bringing it up. Yeah, let's talk about that.
All I want for Christmas, new knees, please.
Because how many knee have you had? 1, 3. You've had 3. So let's talk about like when those were, like how that's affected you, like because I know that has affected you. So I want to talk about that in terms of like what the setbacks have been like, what recovery's been like, mindset, all that good stuff.
Yeah, well, if we talk about the knee injuries, look, fortunately for me as an athlete, I've been relatively unscathed. Even like, I mean, the knee surgery, it sounds really dramatic, but it's not that bad.
Right.
It's still surgery. Don't get me wrong. Like, every surgery is serious and everything comes with a risk. But my knees are otherwise very healthy. I've got plenty of cartilage still. My ACL is all intact. I'm nowhere near a full knee reconstruction. I just keep tearing up my meniscus.
I was gonna ask if it was your meniscus.
Yeah. So a couple of years ago,
those 3 leg days a week.
This last prep was leg day 5 days a week. I was training legs. But no, I'm serious.
I believe every bit of what you're saying.
I mean, that did change as recoverability kind of suffered. We did shift things around. We did shift the split around. But so if we go back a couple of years, so 2021 was when I had the first surgeries done. They were both meniscal repairs. The left one, to this day, I still don't know how I did it. Just in training, it was just, I really wanted to focus on my squat, and I managed to get my squat up to 112 was my top for reps, 112 for 3. I'm not sure what that is in pounds, double it. So what would that be, like about 225. And then just one day after training, I was like, oh, my knee's a bit achy. And it just kind of started getting worse and worse, to the point where I pretty much couldn't train legs without having to ice my knee afterwards. I'm like, I might get this checked out.
Okay, so like if you have something, are you the type that will like just push through it, or were you like, Mikey, go to the doctor right away, or just?
I don't feel pain, and this is the funny thing about enormous. This is the funny thing about the most recent injury. Was so I've basically I've torn the meniscus, but I've also cracked the cartilage, which only happens in trauma. So I've had a day where I've just gone hell for leather on the hack squat or the pendulum or one of those deep knee flexion exercises, and just cracked the crap out of my cartilage. My physio goes, when he got the results back from the MRI, and he's like, Anna, do you just not feel anything? I expect this kind of injury from someone who has been crash tackled, hit by a car, fallen and cracked their knee. How do you not feel this? I'm like, I don't know, it's leg day. Like,
it's leg day.
It always hurts.
Yeah, right.
But I think part of it, you do as a bodybuilder, and look, and this goes for any sport, anything that you want to compete at a high level, you have to push past your limits. And so much of it is just teaching up here to not quit when your brain says that's uncomfortable, because that's just when the set starts getting good. Like that's when the set actually starts.
And I
It's
think like
past
this, like what you're
burn.
saying, right?
Yeah.
What you're saying is like another important thing for people to take into consideration, which is
Yeah.
there is a
Training
very
intensity.
training intensity and having a certain standard for each training session. So like when you go into the gym, you're looking at your weights.
You're
Looking at
preparing for battle.
you're preparing for, especially on leg day, you're doing things like listening to certain music to get your head right for your set. You're timing things. There's all these different cues that you perform in order to get into the space to reach that certain standard. And if you don't reach that standard, you know it. Like if you have a training session and you
wake up at night and you're like, you could have done another rep.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. There is a lot of that. Like there is a lot of that, and not in like I know some people could really, it becomes so bad that they step back. That's not what we're talking about. There's these I don't like calling them like extreme measures and stuff like that, because they're just normal for us. They're not extreme. We like doing these things, but they are techniques. And like you said, it is data that we use to perform this way on a consistent basis, because we're training for hypertrophy. And so in order to reach that, you have to keep pushing yourself, and you do have to go to those places. And so this is another thing for people to take if they do want to move into like optimizing everything, is looking at your training and really being honest with yourself. Those videos, and they don't lie.
It really starts with training too, because so yes, the nutrition is important, right? I mean, because you can't grow muscle without enough calories. You need enough protein, you need enough carbohydrates for recovery, etc., etc. But training is the catalyst of all of it. You can follow the perfect nutrition plan, but unless the training is there, unless you are creating the demand in your sets, you're not changing anything. So it all starts with training. Training has to be number one. Then we go to nutrition to support that training. It's all about training performance. And then it's optimizing everything else around that. But yeah, if you look at in my mind, the pyramid, like the hierarchy pyramid, training's number one. And it's creating that demand. It's giving your body a reason to change.
Right. And then what you do
then
with
number
the
two,
nutrition,
I'd say nutrition, yes, is to support that. It's to support the performance, so you can keep going back day after day, and keep hitting those top sets and progressing your lifts. And then obviously tailoring that to suit your goals, whether you're cutting down or whether you're looking to grow or maintain and whatnot. And then then you're looking at your recoverability and what you can do around that, because you can only train as hard as well as you recover, right? So
right, exactly.
I mean, it's all just kind of one big circle, but
and sometimes we ignore one of those, which is the recovery. Do you train when you're sick? Do you train when you're sick, or do you how do you handle that when you're sick? What?
So you do this for long enough, and especially something about turning 30, you kind of go, you know what? All this stuff about sleep and recovery, I think there's something in it.
Yeah.
You value it that little bit more.
Yeah.
But you know what? But again, it's not until you've kind of gone through those years of just, burning the candle at both ends and just beating yourself up.
There's a certain amount of desperation in the beginning, right? Like you're just so desperate. I remember being like, I feel like I'm losing if I take a day off. Like I'm desperate to get to my goal, so I'm just gonna ignore these things that I should be listening to.
Yeah, I can see that, and I mean, a lot of clients would express to me guilt. They're like, "Oh, I'm in bed with the flu, but I feel guilty that I'm missing leg day," and it's like. You're not going to be growing any muscle if your body's trying to recover from illness. A, you're probably going to dig yourself into a bigger hole. B, your training is going to suck. So you're not creating any demand anyway. Right. And then you're only placing even more demand on your body to have to recover from that session, and then delaying your ability to get over the illness. So just rest, hydrate, get your sleep, eat what you can. And then when you're feeling better, when you're feeling up to it, start working yourself back into training, because I think we get so caught up in the day to day. It's like, shit, I've missed this one training session. But what's one day when you step back and you consider an entire year's worth of training, right? Now, missing one day, no big deal. But if that one day, then, if you go in and you train and then you end up getting really, really sick and then you're out for months, well, that's going to have a much bigger impact on your progress versus just that one day, had you just stayed in bed and recovered and then gone back to when your body was ready and prepared.
Right.
But I get that, and I think that these are a lot of the mistakes that we make when we first start out, because we don't have that prior knowledge and wisdom. We learn from our mistakes, right?
Exactly. And we've all made them. Like, we've all made all 100%. These mistakes. Like, I have gone to the gym sick and set myself back worse, and then been like, oh, okay. But also, like, one thing to go along with that is you don't miss training sessions when things are good.
When you're on. You
save those for a time where you do need surgery, or a time where you are sick. So, like, if it's just Monday and it's getting late, do you like? I'm curious to know what your inner dialogue is, because when we talk about these things, I'm trying to think of. I only know myself. So I'm curious to know what your inner dialogue is. So, like, when it comes to training, to me, I'm like, I don't even have an option. Like, it doesn't even bounce around in there. Like, hey, maybe, it's been a long day. Like, that doesn't really even float around. Like, what is your, okay, so that we're similar in that.
Look, it's basically, I kind of talk about it as you just kind of got to go into autopilot. Yeah. You just kind of got to go, no, I don't really feel like training today, but I don't really have an option.
No.
Just get in and get it done.
Yeah.
I think sometimes, and look, this can be applied to nutrition as well. So, I mean, if I think back to when I was going through like a lot of my eating struggles, and I'd kind of go through phases. I went from being anorexic to bulimic and kind of swung back and forth. And what I guess kind of helped me sort of just pull myself out of that, especially that binge restrict sort of cycle, which I think many competitors can relate to, even if it's not a full-blown eating disorder, but it's certainly coming out of a show and suddenly, like, the pressure of a show is lifted. You can, like, there's no one saying like you can't not have the thing. You can have the thing. So
that's one of the hardest. I think that's arguably harder than the prep, like, mentally.
Oh, definitely.
That post
show. For sure. Absolutely. But I think the more you can kind of put yourself in the shoes of, in my case, future Anna. How's future Anna going to feel about this decision? If we do A or if we do B, which one can I live with? Which one am I going to feel good about? And do that. Mm-hmm. So if we talk about training and I'm having an off day, and let's face it, in prep, every day is an off day. You're very at the start. Yeah, look, motivation's high. You're like, all right, let's freaking
training
do this.
Sucks during prep. Training's so hard during prep.
Towards the end,
it's so hard.
Yeah, and you're not as strong.
No,
everything
no pumps.
You're
flat.
You're tired. You're hungry.
Irritable. You don't want to be there. That's when, like, how you said, like, okay, so like training in the off season is like, I'm going to war. When you're like, training and during prep, you're like, I'm fucked. I'm going to war. Like, And there are times where you're just like, why am I doing this? But then you're just like, you do it. Like, you just do it.
And then you're just like, because I choose this life and no one is holding a gun to my head.
That's right. Like, we're lucky to
and
to
these
be doing
problems are not real world problems.
Right. No, I have a question for you. When you're in the gym, what is your self-talk like when you're getting ready to do like a set or whatever? Like, do you listen to like hardcore music when you're training? Because I'm always like preaching, like listening to like, because music is like a big part of my life. So I'm
Me,
like a big,
huge
I use it as
motivation.
a
Yeah,
tool. And
yeah.
so like when I'm getting ready for a set, I find the right track. I find
Uh-huh.
the right section of the track. I time it. I kind of
I
get
wait for
in.
the drop.
Yeah, I wait for the drop. I
I
get in
wait
there,
for the
but I
drop.
say, and I say funny things to myself. Like,
Mm-hmm.
like I'll call myself names. Like I tend to like more, I like, I don't go like, good job, but like, I'm like more
Yeah.
like, not mean to myself, but like,
Uh-huh.
I tend to use negative reinforcement as that like pushes me harder than like you're doing a great job. I'm more like I call myself like you motherfucker. Like this is going up. Like this is happening whether you like it or not. Get in,
Yeah.
like this is going on, or like I'll think of things that kind of shape me in life that like piss me off, and then but then as soon as I rack it, that's gone. Like I'm
We're
like,
on. Yeah.
yeah, it's like I'm all, but it's like when I'm in it. So I'm curious to know like what is your process like when you're in the trenches?
Yeah. For me, I say, well, okay, my goal is always to bring up my legs. So for me, best legs on stage is always
Yeah.
one of them. Like close the eyes, you picture those legs you want.
Yeah.
Like I picture those wellness girls at the Olympa, like
Yeah.
Issa and Franciella, and I'm like, all right, let's fucking go.
Yeah.
And I log everything, right? So
Right.
I know exactly what weight I have to do, what reps I have to hit. So, if I'm about to go on the pendulum, on the pendy, I'm very clear on my mind.
That thing
You
is
are getting 10
humbling.
reps right now. Freaking love the
That
pendulum.
thing is
Oh,
humbling.
oh, I just look, call me a bit sadistic, but it's so, yes, it's humbling, but there's just no other machine like it where it's just so stable and safe. Because worst case scenario, what happens? You just don't get up off the bottom.
Right. Right.
Like it's not like you're dropping a barbell on
And
your
the way
head,
with the way, like the way that the weight is
Mm,
just distributed and gravity, like you
mm,
don't have to
yeah.
load that up as much as you would like a
Oh
barbell
my
or
god,
a
my
Smith
my my
machine.
pendulum in my gym, it is bitch. I think I actually had the guy who manufactured our particular brand of pendulum, Citadel Strength. He actually came down and checked out our gym and everything, and I asked him, what is the deal with? I mean, I love it. It is the smoothest pendulum I've ever been on. What is the deal though with the carriage? It is so freaking heavy. Like I reckon I
It
could
is.
probably only do I can on my top set on my pendulum, I can max the max I've ever got to is 25 kilos loaded on the back versus other pendulums I've got to nearly 40. To put it in
Okay.
perspective, it
Yeah.
is
Yeah, they're
heavy.
all weird. Like they all like they just are super heavy. Like I
Yeah,
remember when I
yeah.
first used one, I was like, oh, let me put some. I think I was using like a 10 on each side at first, and I was like, oh my god, like why is this so hard?
Yeah. Or unweighted warm up. Oh no, that's a
Yeah,
working set.
right,
Okay.
right. It's
Yeah,
awesome though.
I do love a good pendulum, but yeah, I guess when I'm going in for those kinds of sets, I'm visualizing the end goal. In my most recent prep, it was obviously like I was picturing myself
Mhm.
on stage, being awarded the crown. I was picturing the legs that I wanted in my photos, and then it's just like you are getting 10 reps, whether you like
Mhm.
it or not. Let's
So you're
fucking
like
go.
envisioning what's gonna happen from completing this
Yeah.
goal. I
And
that's super
the
interesting.
other thing I'm doing is I'm picturing my competition. I'm like, I'll be damned if I'm fucking not working harder than them.
Yes. Yeah. Okay.
I'm
Gotcha.
very competitive by nature, so that's kind of what I tap into. If I picture, like I know who my competition is. I'm
So
picturing them in their training, and I'm like, I'm fucking working harder than you.
I don't know about you, but when it comes to show day, So unless unfortunately I haven't had this happen yet, but if I didn't do everything in my power, miss any macros, go out to eat when I shouldn't have been going out to eat, miss a training session, train not to my standard that we were talking about. If I don't do these things, then come show day, I can't go have a good time. And I've not had that happen yet, because once show day gets there,
that's putting yourself in the shoes of future Mikey, right? You're thinking,
exactly.
You're thinking like, what am I going to be happy with? Am I going to regret this decision later on?
Mm-hmm.
And in the case of a prep, absolutely, you want to be coming to show day because that's all you can control, right?
Right.
And this is the thing about subjective sports, is you can't control the outcome on the day. I mean, you've got a pretty good idea of what you need to do to put yourself on the podium. But at the end of the day, it all comes down to what that particular judging panel think at that particular time compared to who shows up. None of which you can control. But what you can control is the effort and the diligence and commitment that you put into that prep to getting to that stage. And if you can show up on show day knowing that you gave every session, every rep, every set, every meal, every night's sleep, ability to recover, if you gave that your absolute all, then that's a win. And that means you're showing up in your best, and that's it. Then you can just go and enjoy.
Yeah, and then you don't have to stress, because like come show day, you shouldn't be. That's not the time to be stressing out and like doing a whole bunch of stuff to like course correct. That's done. The work is done. You're just showing it at that. It's too late. So going there and being able to relax. Again, I'm not saying everything went perfect. I did tell the story where I basically thought, no, I did all that stuff, and then I dropped the ball on just like the most like ridiculous detail ever, which is registration.
Can
you imagine? I almost wish it. You want to know something funny about that? Even though everything like turned out, I almost wish I'm big on stories. I almost wish, for the story's sake, like there was like, and yeah, I fucked up. Like I just missed it. Like as much as in that moment it would have been like, you idiot, there would have been some humor in, like, I'm really big into finding humor in situations. Like I can find humor in like anything, and I think that would have made for an equally good story because then I would have just competed in a different show, like I would have just been like, all right, well, I'll just find another show right here. So, but for the story's sake, like that would have been super funny if like, I actually did miss that show. But yeah, so so those are like intensity cues and stuff like that, which we're talking about. Like that's another thing, like being able to like shape your mindset into training and not exercising, because there's like a huge difference. What do you use to track your weights? Do you use like a journal, or do you use like your phone? Like I use my phone, like, because I like having my phone on hand and I could just see exactly what I'm doing. Like I'm pretty old school that way. Like I don't like carrying a journal around.
Well, I was even more old school than you until recently, because I would handwrite everything. So I was working with a friend of mine who was doing my programming last year, up until last year, and I don't like to have to think about my own stuff. Like, yes, I'm a coach. Yeah, I could sit and write my own stuff. I don't want to. I've got too many other people to think about, and I overthink everything. If it's for me, no. So I outsource everything.
Yeah, same here, by the way.
I don't know. I think too, like working with lots of different people too, you always learn things. Like there's so many things that that I've learned from Cliff. We worked together for years. That I've learned from my other friends in the industry I've worked with, who've done my like training programming, to my current coach now. And there's all little things that you can draw from all these people, and so I think there's a lot of value in like, even though you're a coach, but working with other coaches, because there's this many roads lead to Rome, right?
We're always learning. Like that's kind of what this whole thing is, like self-improvement. because
Yeah.
that's what we're doing. I mean, we're bodybuilders.
Well, that's effectively what it is. Yeah.
It's like self-improvement. And I think that comes in all different areas, learning from other people who have been doing it, who have different backgrounds, and who can, where I've learned the most amount of information is from other coaches. And being coached. And also that goes in everything. So like in music, I was getting coached in music. And once I started getting coached, boom, like I started getting way better. So like that's what it's all about, is learning from other people.
There was a quote that I read somewhere. I can't remember who said it, but it was, in anything that you want to excel in, you get a coach.
Totally
whether
agree.
That's in business, whether that's in music, training, health and fitness. If you want to be the best, if you want to excel, if you want to achieve your absolute potential, get a coach in that.
And that's what we're talking about. Like we're talking about like, I want to reiterate, like we're talking about full potential, optimizing everything. And so far, I think we align pretty much on everything that we're doing. So wait, you used to just like write everything down?
So my friend who was doing my programming for me, so he had actually moved all of his clients across onto Google spreadsheets. And I was like, no. Please continue to send me my program in a PDF.
Fax it on over.
Print it out. I will print it out. I'll put it into my little clip folder, and it will live in my gym bag, so I can handwrite it in. But then since moving across to, I engaged a new coach at the start of, about a year ago now. And he's all Google spreadsheets. So that's just what I've moved across to. So I had to adapt. But my clients, I actually use I use a training app. And they all seem to love it. So it's all available on their phone or on their desktop.
Super user friendly.
But either way, look, whatever you use, it doesn't matter whether that's your handwriting, your notes. I mean, my guys can even print off their programs if they want to. If that's how they prefer to do things, have at it. All I care about is that you're tracking your weights, because you can't progress something when you don't know what you're progressing from. Right. And again, in anything that you want to excel in, you've got to use measurement, right? People talk a lot about staying motivated. Like, how do you stay motivated to do this day in and day out? That's like, well, a big part of that is actually tracking. It's measuring all of this stuff, because if you're not measuring it, then you don't know whether you're progressing, regressing, what needs to change. Measurement is motivation. So, I mean, if there's anything that anyone listening to this can take from this, if you're not already, start tracking your sessions, start writing down. It could be as simple as just writing down like the sets, the weight, and the reps. If you want to, you can even put like a little, how did you feel today? Crap sleep last night, was a bit flat, or felt on top of the world, high carb day yesterday, or whatever.
Those things, those kind of little details matter so much, because you will, like, let's say like 1 week you're having,
can we all just start drinking more than like a liter of water a day?
Yeah, you're right. Have some electrolytes. My God,
hydration, people.
God almighty. Like, and like also even like the time of day that you train, how many meals you had before you train, like how many, like I like to have, like I think we all have a sweet spot in terms of training. Like me, if I train too early, my blood pressure is not where I like it to be. You know, like when you wake up, you're kind of flat and your blood pressure, it's just not where you want it to be.
You're a bit foggy.
Yeah, you're a bit foggy. You don't have as many meals in you. So like I like having 2 meals in me before I train. I don't like training too late, because I find that I start to get little headaches from the day, like, because like we're so wrapped up in screens, like by the time you ever like look at screens so much they give you a headache? Like sometimes it starts to like give you like
the 2 years of COVID lockdown here in Melbourne was great.
Lots of
hours a day. Some of those days I was on Zoom for 8 hours. I mean, look, don't get me wrong, I was so grateful to my client base for continuing to support me.
Sure.
Because I mean, far out, like, you know, when we were in lockdown. So to give a bit of context for the people listening, Melbourne, now I think we were overtaken by somewhere in South America, I think, but for a long time we held the record for the longest COVID lockdown in the world. Even just thinking about it, talking about it, it seems so surreal. I don't know how we went through those 2 years.
Especially for like someone like you, that's like, you know, like that's such a big part of your life, like going out, going to the gym, like
everybody. Yeah. Like when I'm talking COVID lockdown, like I feel like sort of you guys in the States didn't even, you didn't go nearly as extreme as like what it was like here in Melbourne. Right. We had a 5-kilometer radius that we were allowed to leave our home. It was nuts. Yeah.
When did that go till? Like what? Like 2021?
So that started so March 2020 we went into lockdown nationwide.
Right.
Then it was kind of in the hands of the states from there. Now, the rest of Australia, it was a very different experience. Victoria, I don't want to get political. But the way it was managed was very questionable. And he kept us locked up. So 2020, we came out briefly for Christmas. So they ended the lockdowns at the end of 2020. And we had some reprieve over Christmas, New Year's. And then the lockdowns started again in February. We had a couple of 1-week lockdowns. Then it became 2-week lockdowns.
Were you prepping?
And then it was rinse and repeat. So 2020, all the shows got cancelled. 2021, all the shows ended up getting cancelled. So the start of 2021, season A did go ahead. So I actually did put, I had a couple of clients that I managed to get on stage in 2021. I mean, credit to them because they were prepping for 2020 shows. They were prepping for April 2020 when we all went into lockdown. So, I mean, I had clients that were like 4 weeks out from their first show and it was just like pull the rug out from under everybody. So, so then it was just kind of trying to keep that momentum going through 2020, not knowing when on earth all of this like madness was going to end. We got out at the end of 2020, we got a Christmas, we got New Year's. Then we had a few like little mini lockdowns over February, March. Season A still went ahead with restrictions. So I got my clients on stage for season A. And then it was not long after that. I think it was only like a couple of weeks. We were snapped back into lockdown and we were in lockdown for the rest of the year again. So that was 2021. That was when I got both my knee surgeries done. I managed to sneak them in between lockdowns. I got very lucky.
Yeah, that sounds like a good time for it too, like to get it done.
Well, look, it was, and it did make the decision easier because I was going to compete at the end of 2021, but then when we were in and out of lockdown, I remember saying to Cliff, I was like, what do I do here? I mean, I'm training in my garage, which was more than what I had in 2020. I actually ended up going out and just buying a whole ton of equipment and actually setting up a full-blown gym in my garage that year.
Yeah, isn't that the thing that kind of like shifted you to like starting your own thing, like getting like your own place?
Basically, it actually was. So here's the thing about COVID. Look, it had its challenges, but for me and my husband, it was actually the push and the opportunity for us to do what we've been talking about doing for 10 years. So we got through 2021. We came out at the end of that year. And fortunately, touch wood for us ever since, that was.
Did you just touch your head when you said touch wood?
Touch wood.
Oh, okay. I thought you were like touching your head like okay.
Oh, yeah. Touch wood.
I was like, like sometimes you're like knock on wood. Like, no, I thought you said touch wood. I thought you said touch wood, and then you went like, and you booped yourself on the head.
Probably. Still a bit wooden up here. So fortunately for us, we got out of lockdown at the end of 2021, and that has been it ever since. I mean, pray to God. But
Right. Fingers crossed.
I think we're stable now. But yeah, we came out of lockdown, and I mean, so many businesses had gone under during that time. So there were leases everywhere. People, like landlords, were desperate to get people in. So we could, not only was there an abundance of options on the market for us, but we could negotiate pretty much whatever rental terms that we wanted, and we did. So we'd actually caught up with a friend of ours who was he was a chiropractor who was running his own clinic and everything. And he and I have always done a bit of stuff together in terms of collab and everything. Because he's obviously, being a chiro, works with a lot of sports people and whatnot, and I'm a coach. And so, we've always, done some stuff together. And Jake and I had told him about our kind of dream plans to basically be able to set up for me, what I always wanted was what I never had as an athlete, which was one place for training, recovery, all of my allied health and medical support team around me. So a place where no matter at what stage I was at in my journey, I always had.
I know that stuff's really important to you. So one thing that you do, which is something that I don't do, is you're really big into like massage, like the recovery stuff. You will go the extra mile, because that's like a lot of stuff that now, knock on wood,
it's the 1%ers. Like the 1%ers. So like,
I don't have any like like aches, pains, no anything like that.
How?
I don't. I mean, not that I haven't had things, not that I haven't had things come up. I mean, just the other week I had, my something happened to my knee while I was squatting. No, I was doing leg extensions. And you know what happened too? I know what it was. I know exactly what it was. I did a podcast, I think it was that day, and I talked about that I don't have any shit going on, and I think that
you jinxed yourself.
I jinxed myself. So right now, like, I need to be careful because I'm gonna jinx myself. But then, like, like I felt something and it lasted like maybe like a week, so it wasn't, I mean, I was hobbling down the stairs, but it only lasted like a week. So like, in that instance, like I've been like fortunate, very careful, but I know that you really get into the nuts and bolts of the recovery. So that's like even one step further. So I'd be interested. Oh God. And you know what? I put it off until I need a massage. Like, when you're like you're like, okay.
I'm like every 4 weeks.
Oh, like
on the dot. But I need it, because if I let it go 5 weeks, I'm like hobbling around like an old woman.
Yeah. Don't worry. That's just Grandma Anna walking down to the
basically.
Yeah. No, but like someone will be like, they'll like put their arm on my shoulder, and I'm like, oh, like they're like, dude, I just like tapped you. Like, why are you like in so much pleasure right now? I'm like, okay, I need a massage. Like like I really need to get the massage. So I know that like that's something that you really keep an eye on, which is obviously fantastic. And so like, can you feel a major difference when you don't? Like, this is another thing, like I'm kind of like trying to highlight, like, okay, so that's something, like even what you said about lockdowns, like training in your garage, like that resilience, because I don't just want to talk about training and nutrition, like resilience. You said something earlier. You said the knee surgery isn't that bad because that you're going to do your recovery, you're going to do your PT. You already know, like, it's not even a question of, am I going to do this and then be doing your own thing again? Like, you already know.
I already know 12 weeks post surgery, I will be back doing full blown lower body workouts with no limits, balls to the wall. Right. I already know that. I mean,
so that's because you're you. Like, that's what that's like, again, that's like 10 out of 10. Like, even that resilience, like you've built up resilience that you're going to get through.
It is. Look, I mean, mindset is just such a powerful thing in anything. I mean, especially injury recovery though, And if anybody listening right now is going through a period of injury and having to overcome that, and I know as an athlete, it's one of the worst things that can happen, because it robs you from the thing that you love doing the most. And don't get me wrong, like I haven't come out of this unscathed. Like the last few weeks for me post show this has actually been one of the most challenging post show experiences for me. Not from like a binge eating perspective or anything like that. Like I'm kind like that's handled. I'm good with my food now. It's not the like, regaining some body fat and body image issues or anything like that, but it's actually because I haven't been able to train the way that I like and the way that I want to be able to train. Usually post show, again, this comes from 11 years of competing. You learn to just embrace the fact that your show day condition is not your year-round condition, right. And you learn to just embrace a little bit of extra body fat and all the positives that come with that, like better digestion, better sleep, hair, skin, nails, just health, vitality, all of that improves. So like, yeah, maybe your selfies don't look as gnarly, but your life is so much better. So
yeah, because like
I'm
all the
that.
side effects that come from prepping, like you said, like I mean, we haven't even gotten into. We'll get in. There's a lot.
We haven't even got to that yet.
Right.
Yeah, so it's you kind of you learn to embrace a little bit of extra body fat. And along with that, I kind of tell my coach just jack my calories up to maintenance. Like I don't care about staying stage lean. I just want to feel good again. And if there's one thing that I've learned from past preps is trying to stay as close to that stage condition as possible. It's only impacting your off season. It's going to be less optimal, but it's messing with your head as well, because the last thing you want to do after a prep is then have to keep almost prepping.
Don't you think that's where like the binging comes from? Like when you're trying to stay lean, like that's where all mine came from.
That's when mine have come from too. And, and I learned from those experiences, you know what? I don't want to go through that again. Yeah. And so the number one thing to help prevent that is to stop being in a deficit. Start nourishing your body and giving it what it needs, and get rid of that food focus. And when you're nourished and you have energy and you're feeling satisfied and you look forward to your meals, guess what? The binging just doesn't even become a thing. So, I'm at a stage now where like post show, none of that is really a concern for me anymore. But what really got me down this time around was, man, the fatigue for me was next level. I think because my injury happened. Oh my God, Mikey, I've never actually experienced anything like it. I was like, holy shit. I really pushed myself to the nth degree this time around, but I must have just been that in the zone and that focused, because the knee injury happened only about 1 month into prep, 4 weeks into prep. My prep was, I started dieting 22 weeks out. So for most of my prep, I was dealing with this niggling knee injury. And, you just kind of keep pushing. And then, at the same time, you're digging to levels of conditioning that, I've always gotten really lean, but, this time around, I think this was arguably the best condition I'd ever been in, certainly with the most amount of muscle mass. So, and this was the first prep I'd done in 5 years. I'd been off the stage for 5 years. So I really wanted to make a comeback. I was like, I want to step on stage and I want them to go, holy fucking shit, what has Anna been doing? For, like, is this the same girl? Yeah. That's the response that I wanted. So I just like, talk about, days where you just not feel like doing the thing. There was no option. It was like you're in regardless of how you feel. So this time around, I think, like, once the show and everything was done, I mean, peak week was hectic with all the shoots and whatnot, but I think it was just the 22 weeks of just immense focus and absolutely giving my heart and soul to this prep. And then I just collapsed in a heap.
Did you?
So
What did that look like for you?
just absolutely no energy whatsoever. My the joint pain, the muscle pain, like I'm still look. I would say this week gone has been the first week where I've done my check-in and I've gone, you know what? I think I'm out of the hole now. I
It
actually
takes a long
now.
time. It takes
Well, this
it
is.
takes a long time, which is also like I'm
Mm,
glad that you and I are both fresh out of
mm,
prep because my last show was in August. So like
yeah.
I'm still just getting to the point where I'm like, oh, I'm not craving so much sugar. Oh, I finally slept a whole night through.
Yeah, that's 4 months post show, right? And this is the thing. This is what they don't um what you don't realize, especially newer competitors and I mean, bikini competitors, especially are notorious for this. But like 6 months is not an off season. You're going to
No,
spend three
it's
to four
not.
months of that
No. Have
just
you ever done back to
recovering.
back?
Yes. And you know
It's
what,
the
you
worst.
one of the questions you sent me was like, what is the one thing that you would tell yourself, um when you first started out? What's the one like lesson that you wish you could go back and tell yourself? And that is, off season is your best friend.
Mhm.
All the progress happens in your off season. um do it look So when I first started competing, so 2012, I competed back to back seasons. 2012, I took one season off in 2014 to get married. Then I was straight back on stage. 2015, I prepped all through 2015, 2016, 2017. 2019 was my first year where I didn't compete. I pulled out because my body went, fuck you.
Yeah.
And we were 7 weeks out from my show, and nothing was coming off. Mikey, this was, I don't know, and even Cliff was like, and Cliff and I had been working together since 2015, so 4 years, and he was like, yeah, I don't know what is going on with your body right now, but it is behaving very peculiar. It's very peculiarly. And is that a word? Peculiar.
I think
Anyway,
it is. Peculiar.
strangely,
Yeah.
out of the
Have you
ordinary.
ever said a word so many times, like in a row, like peculiar?
Yeah, just
Like,
then.
okay,
Yeah.
yeah. And then, but then it like becomes like a warped version of the word. And you're like, is that even a word
Is that
anymore?
is
Like,
that
that
it?
doesn't sound.
Yeah. So anyway, we were 7 weeks out, and my macros were, I was on like 1,000 calories a day, and I I was hitting the mark. Like Mikey, I was leaving no stone unturned. It
Yeah.
was cardio every day, and I think we've got to like 75 minutes of cardio a day. 7 weeks out, um, I've had pretty much no carbohydrates in my diet whatsoever. I think by that stage I was on about 50 carb, which was practically, greens. Um, Nothing was moving. And honestly, I probably had about 7 or 8 kilos to lose.
Yeah.
And that was
Your body
I
had
turned
enough.
around and I was like, you know what, Cliff? I think we need to call it. This is just, we're just like, and
Yeah.
my weight was just going up. I mean, obviously, I was
I
stressed
was
out of
just
my
about to,
brain.
I'm like, you had to have been stressed to the max too.
Oh my God.
Especially
I
because like you have
felt like
such a,
shit. Like,
yeah.
yeah. And then beyond the fact that my body was clear, something was clearly going on, that it was stressed anyway. But then let's now compound that with all the emotional stress of,
Yeah.
I've got a show in 7 weeks. Why is this not working? I'm ticking
Yeah.
all the boxes, all the things. Like,
Are you high
and
stress?
it's
Like, are
not
you a high
working.
stress? Like, are you typical? Are you high stress? You are.
You look up in the dictionary type A personality, and it just has a
Okay.
picture of me.
Okay.
Yeah.
Gotcha. Gotcha. You know what's funny though
I'm
is like,
like,
see, like this stuff, you can't tell. Like, that's one of the nice things about having these conversations is just like these are things that like no one would be able to tell that from your like content. Like, no one would be able to tell
well, that's
that.
good.
Yeah, like you
That's
don't come
nice.
across. You
I
don't
hope
come
I
across
hope I
that
don't
like.
come across as neurotic as I actually
No,
am.
no, you don't. You don't. And so I think like some of these conversations kind of like humanize people, you know, because like we're not
Yeah.
just like these, even though we're talking about like, yeah, we do all these extreme things, but we're not talking about it in that way. Like these aren't like we're talking about this in a very like we're just really passionate. We just really love this stuff. And at the end of the day, we just want to do really well. Like we're trying our best to to do the best that we can with this stuff. And so it's not like, you know, I think when people see it kind of like you were telling me like about your journalism career, and like people were people were saying like you might have to start wearing a jacket because you're getting too jacked, and that's like people
Well,
see it and they think it's really
we
like
fill in
extreme.
maybe we fill the audience in a little bit on that. But so before I became a coach full time, I spent 6 years in the media industry, largely as a television news reporter. I was a presenter for a number of the major networks here in Australia, and I started competing when I was still reporting, and it was during my first competition prep, and my news director pulled me aside and was like, "And I don't take this the wrong way, but you need to start wearing jackets for all of your pieces to camera. It's just you're just starting to look a little bit too jacked."
You're like, yes, finally.
And I've gone, okay, I can do that. And in my head, I'm like,
yeah, right. Like that's like
and
I'm still waiting for someone to tell me that.
Back to and this and this is going back to like my first ever prep. Yeah. So, you know, like I looked nothing like what I do now. I mean, nowadays,
what they would do now, like if you placed you in that scenario back then, and like they would be like, now they'd be like, whoa, like we need to put
they'd be like too much.
Too much. It's just your head checking in, like you're just like they just have you filmed from up here. But you know
they've
what?
Got AI for that stuff now, so you know.
Yeah, that stuff freaks me out. But you know what though? Like that's the kind of stuff. Like people see this stuff and they do think like, oh, it's like, you know, it's hard to like. So like, it's hard to humanize it.
At the end of the day, well, we're all just people. We're all just we're not perfect. We mess up, we have setbacks, but it's all in how you recover from that, right? Mm-hmm. You know, there's days where I don't hit my macros perfectly. It happens.
Yeah.
Like, you know what? There's days where, you know, you have those fuck it moments. There's days where, you know, your training's not awesome. Mm-hmm. It happens, but you just don't make those moments the norm. That's right. I think that's the difference. It's being able to just go, you know what, water under the bridge. Let's learn from that. And tomorrow's a new day. Start afresh.
Let's talk about like macros and let's really get into like, okay, like how often do you go out to eat?
During prep, I don't.
Not at all, right?
No.
Okay.
During prep, it's that's it. We're on. And look, at the end of the day, it's what, 20 weeks. You know.
Yeah.
That's it.
That's like a big deal to a lot of people, though. Like a lot of people going out to eat is such a big deal in our world.
You know, and you know what it is, because don't get me wrong. During my off season, like right now, I love going out to eat. But yeah, we'll go out to eat. Like, okay, look at Christmas, New Year's, there's a lot more social stuff going on, right? So, you know, I mean, I've got social things most weekends. But, you know, but that's not like a normal time for me, right? During the year, usually me and my husband will either, you know, cook up something nice at home, which is...
You guys eat some good stuff. I've seen your pictures. So you guys get into some desserts too.
Look, the one thing that bodybuilding teaches you is to be a calorie snob and a food snob. And if those calories aren't worth going over my macros for, then I want a refund.
You're speaking my language. So that's totally the way I approach it.
So it's got to be good.
Yeah. If I'm going out to eat,
worth it.
Like if I'm going out to eat, here's how I approach going out to eat. So like kind of how we're talking about like the save your missed training sessions for times when you're sick and stuff. Like I take that approach with my like dining out. So like I save my dining out for family events, special occasions, for people that I want to spend quality time with, people that I really love, and people that are important to me, and people that I care about. That's who I share those experiences with. Like I don't go out to eat with just anybody. Like I don't like spending the calories on it, and I don't like, that's a special thing to me. So I save it for the people that I care about most. And then when I do it, we're doing it up. So like we're getting some good stuff. Like we're not just gonna go and get like this whatever.
So
like, hey.
so when you go out to eat, you're not tracking macros. You're going to go enjoy a meal responsibly, but you're not going to worry about like,
what I'm going
am I going over my carbs or fats or
there
whatever,
are no carbs or fats when I'm going into this. So like I do approach my day. So like, okay, so I will approach it almost like intermittent fasting, where it's like, okay, I'll stick to protein like during the day, because I know like I like to have it. I actually really prefer it to be like the last meal of the day. So like I don't have to have any more meals after it. I'll replace like my refeed day with, I call them special occasion meals. I feel like they have a really nice, I don't like the word people.
It's got a nice connotation to it.
It's got a nice connotation to it. Like, because again,
special occasion meal,
special occasion meals, because that's exactly what they are. And so I do not do that during prep, but out of prep, I will do that. And I don't do it every week. So it's like, I'm also choosy. I'm choosy with the people, and I'm choosy with the, if I just had one of those meals, I'm like, I don't have a problem, even if it is a holiday or whatever. I don't have a problem not partaking. It depends on what I'm doing and what I'm feeling. And then I base it around that. But then when I'm doing these, I'm like, okay, carbs, fats, whatever. Like that ain't even a thing in my world right now. Cause we're going, because I'm going to the best bakery in town, and I'm getting every single thing that they have, and I'm showing up. I'm coming correct. So like, and everyone around me loves it. They go, oh, it's one of Mikey's special occasion meals. Like, yes. Like, everyone gets excited because we make a little game out of it. So we're all trying these things together. There's a huge amount of laughter around it. There's a huge amount of bonding, and they know like, okay, Mikey's going to handle dessert because I'll come up with the best
memories
stuff.
over macros.
Absolutely. So like, that's the way. And you know what? I find that approach to work really, really well. I do think some people go out to eat too damn much. Like it's just a lot. Like you're going out to eat every day.
It's finding that balance, right? Because I think where a lot of people go off the rails, and even those who think they're doing all the right things, but I eat healthy when I go out. It's like, but here's the thing. Those meals taste so good because chefs don't care about your waistline.
Right.
They want you to come back because they want you to enjoy it. So those meals that you think are relatively healthy are actually a lot higher in calories than you think.
Yeah, they're like, here's your broccoli, and it's just like, like here's your vegetables, and it's covered in oil.
It's been soaked in butter for 3 days. So I think that's where a lot of people, especially when they're new to all of this, where they don't realize that it's actually setting them back a lot more than they think. Now, is that to say don't ever eat out? Absolutely not. I think that you can absolutely eat out responsibly. But again, I think it just comes with experience. It comes with a little assertiveness as well, not being afraid to order off the menu. So the way I approach it, so off season, we'll usually go out to eat, on average, maybe once a week, once every 2 weeks. Sometimes like we'll do something nice at home, or we'll go out and enjoy a meal and a movie or something. But usually, unless it's a special occasion, I'm working those meals into my macros. So, we're choosing a restaurant that's pretty easy to track, and I'm not afraid of, asking for, hey, can I have sauce on the side? Or can I get this, but no cheese, or whatever it may be. So that's how I approach it. In prep, no, you can't afford those variables. It's you're on, you've committed to this, and these are just the sacrifices that you are choosing to make. You can't, have an elite level physique and just keep doing the things that the average person does. If you want elite results, you have to behave in an elite way, and that means making sacrifices. It's not forever. And again, I think this is where you and I are the same, is because like when we're on, but then we also know how to step back. And there's times for that. So off season is the time for, growing, having a little bit more flexibility with our diet, like enjoying a special occasion meal, all of those things, not really just sweating the small stuff. Do we still prioritize our training? Yes. Do we still meal prep? Yes. So all of those basics are still happening in the background. But I guess, when it comes to things like eating out or going on holiday, for example, where you're not able to train as optimally, or maybe you don't even have access to a gym at all and need to take a couple of weeks off training, like that's okay. But again, it's being able to come back and getting back to your bases and checking those boxes when you come back. So I think it's just knowing when there's a time to push and when there's a time to have a bit more, for want of another word, balance.
Yeah. No,
and I think whatever that means for you.
I think you said one of the most important things. It's like, if you want to have an elite level physique, then there are some things, there is a cost. And
absolutely,
we're so willing to pay. Like, it's not, like you said, it's only 22 weeks. Like, that sounds like, that sounds like a lot to someone who's just getting into this stuff, but to us, we're all for it. It's not a problem at all. And to a certain degree, it really does make the special occasions more special. Like, it makes, absolutely. I find that, like, if you're going out to eat all the time, it loses its luster. It loses its what makes it special and unique. And when you're going and it's like something for you and your husband to look forward to, and you're like, date night's coming up. We get to go and we're going to have a movie and we're going to eat these things that we've been thinking about. It makes it so much more enjoyable. And you're able to, like, have that flexibility during the off season. But I wanted to make a point to really, really talk a lot about going out to eat, because it's just such a big part of culture in the world. And most people, like anyone who's listening to this, they're really probably going to be the only ones in their circle when they go out and then when they live life that are following any form of a fitness regimen. It's not uncommon to just go, unless you're hanging out with a bunch of bodybuilders, and you're at a show, right? Like me and Cliff, we're hanging out, like we're doing the same stuff. But outside of that, like, I'm really the only person who lives like this. And so you also touched on something that's like a really good skill, like a pro tip, which is sauces. Like, sauce on the side is one of the biggest calorie savers. And to be honest, I think stuff tastes way better without it's completely covered in like all of the sauces that they use. Like sushi, I think when you eat like simple the way that we do, then I think our taste buds has become hypersensitive to those like super hyper palatable foods. Which, I've spoken before to my clients about using that to your advantage, whether you're in a fat loss phase or whether you're in a growing phase. So like when you're in a growing phase, those hyper palatable foods, use those to your advantage because they make you want to eat more. When you're in a fat loss phase, simple, plain, bland is going to work to your advantage. There's nothing worse when you're in a deficit and you finish your meal and you're like, well, that didn't even touch the sides. And oh my God, that tasted so good. I want to go eat like another 10 of those. Not ideal. No,
setting,
like
right?
You kind of get like this little superpower, which it's like food tastes as good as it's ever going to taste in your entire life while you're prepping. Like, it's not even close. Like, it's almost like your taste buds,
those cheat meals just hit different, don't they?
Like, but the funny thing is, like, you can't really utilize it because you're making these like weird concoctions and stuff like that. And like a normal person looks at it and they're like, Ooh, well, I don't know about that. And you're like, this is the greatest thing ever. I'm just so lucky to have this
Oh my God.
opportunity to
And
have
when
this.
when you're in prep and you uh something about like rice cakes on show day, right? I don't know about you, but I pretty much would never eat them year round, like ever. But something about rice cakes with a bit of almond butter and some
It's the
maple
best thing
syrup
in the
on show
world.
day, like, oh my God. And then you go back to just eating like a normal person. You're like,
I eat so many rice cakes during prep because rice cakes to me are a shuttle, and I can shuttle like
yeah.
different things. You can make so much stuff. If
Oh
you can
yeah.
make you can
Yeah.
make so much stuff in a regular rice cake, like just a salted
Mm,
kind. That's like 6 or 7
yes.
carbs. Like so,
Mm,
I'm like working on like
yeah.
quantity. Like I want
Yes.
a whole row of these, and that's fine. And then I'm
You're
going to
you're what we call in the industry a volume eater. Yeah.
yeah, volume, like just the act of I get so many weird habits during prep, like so many. Like I've done so many like
I think we all do.
embarrassing things, like and made so many mistakes. But one thing that I do that's really weird is I tend to push all of the food to one side. I don't know that I do this. I push all the food to one side of the plate, and then I take little bits of it and eat little bits of it. And I'm like, it's like a survival mechanism. I didn't know that until like a couple preps in, and I was like, wait a minute. I was doing this for that one prep. I
Yeah.
don't do this. This is weird. And I'm like, oh, I guess I do that during prep.
I mean, so I'll eat my food in like smaller bowls or on smaller plates to make it feel like I've got a full bowl of something. Because if you've got like a
Yeah.
little meal in a big plate,
Yeah.
it's just depressing. I also I'll eat so like oats. I'll eat with like a little baby teaspoon
Okay.
rather than like a normal spoon because it lasts longer.
Yeah.
Um, and and I've been like this my whole life. I don't blame prep for this, but I'm a compartment eater.
What is a
So I
compartment eater?
can't. A compartment eater is you eat certain foods together at a time. So like I will start with the vegetables first, and I have to finish all of
Mm.
my vegetables before I'll then go to like the starch, to like the potatoes. Then I'll eat my potatoes, or I might do the protein. Then I might go to my chicken, and then I'll go to the
Okay.
potatoes. Whatever looking forward to most about that meal, I'll save for last.
Oh,
But yeah,
I
but
get
apparently,
that. I get that.
but the compartment thing, apparently that's genetic. My uncle is also a compartment eater. Yeah,
Really?
weird,
I didn't know there was a
yeah.
name for it. Okay, so like what happens if it mixes?
Just messes with my head a bit.
Yeah, okay. So like I'm like, okay, so like I get compartment eating, but let's take it one step further. Like if a pea ends up with the potato, like is something bad gonna happen, or is it not like quite that intense?
Oh, it's not quite that intense. I'm not
Okay.
that much of a lunatic, but
Like because sometimes there's like there's like, okay, but wait, now I need to go back and I need to rearrange some stuff.
make it again. Yeah.
But like, you like hit the whole plate off the Jake's like, what the heck was it? He's like, oh, a pea must have came into the potato again. That's just editor prep. But I get that last thing because like I always make my way to what I save what's worst for first, and then make my way what's to best. So like when I get all those desserts and everything like that, I like force people to like play this game where we like go through and we're like, all right, let's say we got a dozen donuts. I know you like donuts. I've seen some of those pictures. So like, all right, let's say we got a
Hey,
dozen donuts, right?
I don't discriminate.
No, me neither. So like,
I'm
all right,
down
let's
for
say
it all.
so like let's say we're sitting here and we got a dozen donuts, right? All different flavors. So we're all gonna sit here. Jake's gonna come in here. We're all gonna sit and we're gonna go, okay, let's talk about this. What do you think is going to be the best? And what do you think is going to be the worst? So let's start with what's worst. And then we'll take and I already got these pre-cut into quarters. So we're set. Like everything, the table is set. You got your drinks, everything, we're set. Everything's already pre-prepared. So I've taken care of everything. So like, all right, we go, all right, let's start with the worst. And we go, oh, and we deliberate. What did you think about that? Like, oh, okay, that was pretty good. And then we work our way, and there's always a surprise. So like you'll start being like, man, that plain one, that was good. Like that was really good. That was a sleeper, and then that will make its way. And then at the end, we'll just rank.
You know what
everything.
sucks though is when you get it wrong and you eat the best one first.
Yeah.
Like, damn.
You know what happens?
That one was
though?
The best.
The way that it works though is by the time when you're hungriest, that's when things taste the best. So by the time you get to the best one, like you're kind of full.
Yeah, so you've got that, and then you get to the end one, and you're like, oh, I really should probably just save this for tomorrow.
One time,
I'm feeling like I'm about to get diabetes.
one time, my friend. So like when I was in Austin, we would go to this place called Voodoo Donuts, and these donuts not even donuts. Like they're hardly donuts. They're like, you ever see donuts where they're like, okay, it's Captain Crunch, but they put like the entire box of Captain Crunch on there. Like it's like if it's a peanut butter donut, they
Mikey,
basically.
Here's the thing about Melbourne. We're practically the foodie capital of Australia. So
nice.
Like regular donuts don't really exist here. It's all about everything is gourmet and Instagram worthy.
Okay, cool.
So
perfect.
Which makes prep really challenging.
Yeah, because everywhere you go is just like
kind of. Well, that's why you just don't go out.
Yeah.
I don't need that kind of torment. Thank you.
these donuts are like that. Like they're just crazy. So they're over the top. So we're sitting there and it's like there's a bunch of us, we're eating, but I'm not eating because these are like juggernaut donuts. I'm not eating the whole quarter of my donut. I'm just taking a bite because that bite is like 1/4 of a donut. So by the time we get to like 8, my friend is like not looking well. And then we realize, oh, he's eating his whole bit. So he's basically had like a dozen donuts by the time we get there. And he had to lay down and he had to like recover a bit from that. But
we've all been there.
When I moved to Austin, there were food trucks everywhere. That's not a thing by me. So like everywhere I'm going, I'm running into a food truck.
Big in Melbourne too. We've got big parks that are just like food truck parks.
Oh, they're so good.
You go there
too.
And it's like a foodie playground. We actually haven't been to any of the ones here, but I've heard they're really good. So yeah, we tend to be kind of more restaurant kind of. Yeah.
No. So okay. So one thing that we also talked about that I want to like put the importance on is the off season. So like, how long are your off seasons? Because like you said, it was 5 years. Because I'm like a 3 to 5 year guy. Like how long are your off?
So that's the longest I've ever been off stage. And look, really, it was because 2 years of that was spent locked up in our houses. A year of that was then spent setting up Reform. I decided that, trying to get a business off the ground in the first year is really not an ideal time to be doing a prep. Like prep requires a lot of focus and energy. And expense. There's financially it's very especially for females. You guys are not lucky.
No, those like some of the especially with the shows that you do. I mean, I can't. Those things have to be so expensive.
My theme wear is hanging.
I'm surprised you didn't show up with that thing on. Yeah, that is
hanging
great.
Up.
Yeah, that is. I mean, did you have to design that and everything, or?
So I worked with a bikini designer for it. So we sort of workshopped it. She was the creative genius that put it all together. But I kind of came to her with like, I want to do a peacock theme. These are the colors I want to work with. No budget. I wanted to go.
Let's go
big. I was like, I don't care what it costs me.
Give me wings.
I just you have full creative freedom.
Yeah.
And then, we kind of emailed back and forth like a few different ideas and inspo pics and stuff. And then, then she actually came up with the idea of like the arm sleeves. Because what we also had to consider, so my show was up on the Gold Coast and I live down in Melbourne. She's Gold Coast based, so I didn't have to get the thing wear up there, but I had to get it home. So we also had to consider what's going to fit in my suitcase. What can we put on the plane? So something that was, like those big wings that you'd wear over your shoulders, like a big thing, wasn't really going to be practical. So I wouldn't be able to get it home easily. So she came up with the arm sleeves, and it all just sort of came together. But it was kind of a vision which I'd had in my mind, that when I moved up into the fitness category and I had to do a theme wear, it was going to be a peacock, and it was going to be the best sparkly freaking peacock you'd ever seen.
Yeah. The stuff you have to do with your routines is also a lot more detailed than we have to do.
Yeah. The style is very different. And look, I've done all the federations, right? I started in, so if we go back 11 years ago, I started in ANB, which is the Australian Natural Bodybuilding Association, I think it stands for. So there's ANB and INBA. I actually cross-competed fitness model and figure in my first ever season. And did very well in both, actually. So I was able to cross over between the two fairly easily, just in changing your posing. So I started with A&B, INBA, which is now that, like, down the track as politics have it, that federation ended up splitting. But I did all of that. I did IFBB, which would be NPC for you guys. Then after NPC, I ended up going to the WBFF, and now the WBFF Australia have split and started FMG, which is Fitness, Muscle, Glamour. And so I've done them all. And look, every federation has its own set of categories and criteria. So like the bikini look for IFBB is not the bikini look for WBFF or now FMG. It is not the bikini look that you'd expect in ANB or INBA or ICN is what a lot of people know it as now. So I've gone from fitness figure. I ended up earning my figure pro card with Muscle Mania back in 2013. And then after that, because as a pro, you can only then compete in pro shows, and I was restricted to that federation. And Muscle Mania just wasn't really a big federation over here in Australia. So I was basically looking at, I had 2 shows a year that I could do, and that was either Fort Lauderdale or Vegas. So for me to just compete and continue doing what I loved, my only option was to travel overseas every year, which for me wasn't really viable.
And when you're competing, that's a big deal on your physique. Cause like, I don't know about you, but like I could go on a plane for 1 hour and your
and this is the thing
changes.
About Australia. If we travel anywhere internationally, everywhere is a massive long haul flight. Like
that's a big deal.
Get to LA, it's like 14 hours straight.
Yeah, and so you'd have to come in so much earlier, like to even do something. That would be a huge pain in the ass.
Yeah. I mean, I've competed in the States a number of times. Like 2018, I was over there 3 times in 1 year. Before that, it was 2013. I did the Worlds with Muscle Mania. That was in Vegas. So I have had experience with that, and there is that, but it's also the time, the expense that comes along with that, and then obviously being in an unfamiliar environment. Like, where do I train? Like, what foods can I buy? I mean, the States is pretty easy because US and Australia are fairly similar in terms of our culture and food availability and whatnot. But I know that, like, there's places in the world where you go that, you go to Asia and they don't have rice cakes. You've got to, and nothing's in English.
Yeah.
So there are those challenges. But when I turned pro with Muscle Mania, I basically had a decision of, well, do I stay with the federation or do I try something else? And 2015 was the first year that the Arnolds came to Australia. So I wanted to be a part of that. So when I stepped off stage in 2014, the goal was, we're making the crossover from pro figure Muscle Mania to IFBB bikini. Big change. So, I couldn't come in as hard. I had to change my shape completely. The Arnold, I ended up doing really well. I ended up placing fifth at the Arnold's, actually, which was like massive. That was my first. Well, no, I lie. It wasn't my first IFBB show. I'd actually won my first IFBB show in Victoria, so down here in Melbourne. And then I did the Arnold's. I came fifth in the open bikini lineup. And then the goal from there was like, well, I want to turn pro. So I competed back to back to back to back. And I was always up there. I was always top three, never quite got that pro card. And eventually I switched to WBFF. And at that point, because I'd spent all those years trying to mold my physique to fit the IFBB or in your case, NPC bikini criteria, it was now a case of like, okay, well, I'm going to this new federation. Where on earth do I fit? Because their bikini was a lot softer, curvier. So my natural fit was more their fitness, but I had nowhere near the muscularity to stand on stage in fitness. So I'm like, far out, what do I do here? So my first WBFF show, I cross-competed bikini and fitness just to see where I'd land. And I ended up turning pro in my first show, but bikini. So I'm like, okay, bikini is where I fit. But I always came in too lean for bikini. It was just the tricky thing about the bikini category with WBFF. I'll just refer to it as FMG. With FMG,
there are so many different federations and then splits and
well, look,
it's like that everywhere.
Here's a judge's insider tip. It all comes down to the glutes.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So the female categories are heavily judged on the legs, especially the glutes. Now, in order for me to bring my glutes in tight enough that we're seeing enough glute hamstring separation, that's, they're tight, they're still full, I've got a raging six pack, like at 16 weeks out.
Right.
And it's just how my body fat distribution is. You can't change that. So naturally for me, the bikini category is a real struggle. I come in far too lean, or if I soften up, my waist is too thick because, well, I'm still holding body fat and my glutes aren't tight enough. So it's like, I just can't make it fit. So when I stepped up on stage in 2018, I was like, I'm kind of done wasting my time with the bikini category. I actually need some time off to be able to put on some muscle and step up into the fitness category.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I was going to try for 2019. I was going to stay with bikini that year, but 2019 just went, well, I ended up pulling out of that prep. Body just went, you know what? You've been competing back to back since 2012. You are done. And it turned out I actually had a parasite. So that's what was causing all the crazy weight gain. And I was getting like these crazy skin breakouts, fatigue, and oh my God, like it was a whole thing. And that took
like a nightmare.
Once we eventually, it was a nightmare. To go from having so much control over your body to all of a sudden having absolutely no control over what it was doing was mentally very challenging. And it made me question many times over, will I ever compete again? That was hard.
So like
months.
How did you figure that out? Like, what was that like for you?
Well, testing. So I bounced around like every specialist in Melbourne. Pretty much like the response from the general medical community was like, "You're just stressed." I'm like, "Yeah, no shit." I've gained like 7 kilos in a month, and I'm barely eating over 1,000 calories. I'm stressed. Like I was having all these crazy side effects. I pretty much couldn't eat any kind of carb without looking like I was 6 months pregnant. Crazy skin breakouts, brain fog. Just my body was completely out of control. And so I started seeing I was seeing a naturopath, and we tested for thyroid. My test came back as I was subclinical hypothyroid, which is kind of to define that I wasn't like, if I went to a doctor, they wouldn't classify me as hypothyroid. So I wouldn't meet the criteria for that. But my thyroid function was certainly very, very low. I was like on the cusp. So that's kind of the difference between subclinical and, medically diagnosed hypothyroid. So, but, was that the problem? It was further upstream. And we eventually, I was actually at a workshop, and we had a guy come in who was he's like a gut guru, and he was talking about like all these different kind of gut related stuff, and I'm sitting there, and I'm like, oh my god, that's me, that's me, that's me. Yep, all of these symptoms that you're currently talking about, that is me. And I messaged a friend of mine who was a sports naturopath, and I was like, I think I might have SIBO, or there's something going up in my gut. Can we test? Sure enough, off the charts. Parasite plus all this other opportunistic bacteria that had made its way in, and was messing with my thyroid. My adrenals were absolutely cooked. So cortisol was through the roof. I was retaining fluids like crazy,
and eating like nothing,
were off the charts, and eating like nothing. That's why thyroid was so low. But so I had like all these nutrient deficiencies from a combination of not eating enough, but also because I just wasn't absorbing anything because my gut health was that compromised. Metabolism was just shot.
Was that your hardest prep? Because that, to me, that sounds like that.
Well, I pulled out. Okay. I was 7 weeks out from the prep, and that was when I said to Cliff, I don't know what's going on, but we are not going to be ready, and I do not want to step on stage not looking better than what I did last year. So let's just call it. So we ended up just doing some shoots. But even to this day, like when we tried to peak for them, and I'd have a mouthful of rice and I would just like blow up. And he was like, you know what? I think we're just going to deplete the whole way. How was your like? We're not going to worry with carbs. We're just gonna. So anyway, it was after that where we found out that we did the gut testing, found out I had all this stuff going on. It took about a year of various gut protocols. I had to follow a very specific diet and everything, but I got there. Again, that was going through 2021. So we were in lockdown anyway. I ended up doing some photo shoots at the end of 2021, and that kind of gave me the confidence that, oh no, the body can still do this. So
did you think legitimately for a little bit, like you're like, I'm not going to be competing ever again?
Yeah. Well, I literally felt like I'd completely lost any kind of control over my body, because so in bodybuilding and as coaches, we become so attuned to being able to manipulate the smallest thing to achieve a certain result. None of that was working. Nothing made sense on paper. On paper, I was eating so little. Like, how was I still functioning? It just nothing made sense. And yet, how was my weight still? How was I still gaining? But nothing was responding. There was a time there, absolutely, where I was like, I think this might be me done. I think this is probably it. This is my body now. And
how did you mentally, like, how did you handle that? What were you
not like, very well?
were you pretty negative, or did you like have to like kind of like go to therapy, or like was there anything you needed to do?
No, look, I think I just needed an answer. I wasn't satisfied with you're just stressed response. Like, no, or my favorite, you just need to do some more cardio.
Yeah. Meanwhile,
fuck.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was my favorite. So I just wasn't satisfied with the responses I was getting from the general medical community. I knew I had to dig deeper. And that was when I reached out to the friend of mine who was a sports naturopath, because I guess naturopathy and whatnot gets a bad rap because they're kind of seen as like witch doctors and do all this funky stuff. But it's like, no, what they look for is optimal, right? So when you go to the doctor and you get a blood test done, they're looking at ranges that they see in the everyday. Now, who are the everyday people that are going to see doctors? Sick people. So you're getting a range of results based off a majority of a population who is majority not well. So and then the way that they see it is like, well, so long as you're within that reference range, you're okay. But you and I aren't okay with average. We want optimal. Mm-hmm. And this is where naturopaths will differ from your GP. So when they look at your pathology results, they're not looking at the reference ranges. They're looking at your functional optimal ranges. That's where you want to be. There's no point in me being subclinical hypothyroid down here. Yeah, okay, I'm on the low end of the reference range. I'm fine. I don't need medication. I'm glad I didn't go down that path. But I don't need medication. There's nothing wrong with you, and just send you on your way. And it's like, yeah, but I'm still gaining weight to 100 miles an hour, yet I'm eating nothing. I don't feel well. I can't train. I can't even so much as look at a starch without my stomach blowing up. Like, I'm just meant to live like this. So yeah, so I guess it was knowing my body enough that I knew that there had to be something else. And so I just kept digging. I bounced around like that many different specialists until I found the answer, and found the answer. And then once I started the protocol, it was almost like overnight things got infinitely better. So yeah, and so then it was just the patience in seeing that out, and would have like little setbacks, and so then we'd go back on the protocol, and then so it took time and just patience, but again, it's also, I think it's having that confidence to know that you can get through it.
Right.
And I look back at that time now, and you know what? It made me such a better coach because I've been through that challenge. I learned everything there was to know about gut health and the impact that it will have on your health and fitness goals. I know the signs to look for.
Yeah, you've probably been able to spot this out in people too, as well, like
100 miles an hour.
Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah, and look, it does all start with stress. Stress is often the catalyst, and for me, I've lived a very stressful life when you consider, like, as right from my childhood as a high level athlete, and then what I put my body through with eating disorders up until my early 20s, and then in media, living a really high stress life with shift work, pressure of deadlines, overtraining, not eating properly, and then to step into a adult lifetime of competition prep. Stress was obviously the catalyst for that, and the gut brain axis is very strong. Your brain and gut are talking to each other all the time, so when you're in this stress state, that's going to affect your digestion as well. And so for me, it was just those years of stress, one that allows for one opportunistic bacteria to make its way in, and then just proliferates from there.
Have you ever talked about this publicly at all? Because is this anything you've ever have you spoken about this before?
Yeah, look, I actually have, but it's been a while. I was posting about a lot when I was going through the protocol and the journey. So I spoke about it a lot in 2020 and 2021. I haven't spoken about it for a while now. So I don't know, maybe that's...
Were you ever worried that it might affect your career? Like,
no,
it was just more competing.
It was more competing, yeah, because I'd built a very robust coaching business, so it never affected my ability to be a great coach to my clients. And like I said, if anything, it forced me to level up. It forced me to become more knowledgeable in this kind of stuff. And in going through that process and living it myself, it helps me to not only identify it in clients, but be able to then coach them through it as well. So, like I said at the start, with every failure or setback, there's always a lesson. So it's what you
see. I think these stories like this, to me, like that stuff, like we didn't plan that. Like that stuff, I feel like that, like real human stuff that people can relate to.
Yeah.
I feel like that is the most motivating stuff. Like you could talk about like all of the measuring and the tracking and the meticulousness. And some of, there's a lot of value in that. But when someone hears a story like that, and it's like, here is this person who looks like this, who has all these trophies, who has all these accolades. And there was a time where she was going through this and thought like, wow, I'm never going to be able to do this again. And then figured this out, was resilient, figured out how to get there and put the time in to get well. I always find that stuff not only super interesting, but like that is super motivating for people who are in those scenarios, because we've all been in these like situations where like, you're like, how am I going to get out of this? Like I'm in hell right now. Like
you just keep taking it a day at a time, but it's only when you quit that's when you fail, right?
That's where the resilience comes in.
Yeah, exactly. And with every challenge that you face, that's an opportunity to build that resilience again. It's the same with the knee surgeries, right? So 2 knee surgeries back a couple of years ago. Get over the gut stuff. Let's beat up my knees. And
there's a saying. There's like a saying, and I forget how it goes exactly. So I'm paraphrasing, but it's like life is always, you're either in a dilemma, coming out of a dilemma, or headed for a dilemma. And that is so true. I can't think of a time. I mean, there's always
something, right?
There's always something. And I think like a big difference between like people who are really into this stuff like we are, and then like people who maybe aren't so interested in it, is your earbud going beep, 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 beep.
Yeah, they're about to go flat.
I know that feeling. It's the worst sound in the world. It starts chirping in your ear. But that, like, the major difference is like that resilience and that ability to just like, no matter what is going on.
And that could be like, you might be going through like injury recovery or a really difficult time in your life, or you may have just messed up your macros yesterday, right? It's being able to bounce back. It's it's staying positive and not letting those things derail the end goal, right?
Absolutely. So, well, we've been talking for a little bit. I mean, I think we kind of put everything into like this umbrella, because I do think like a lot of these things that we're talking about are both pre-contest and post-contest, like having that gas tank full, right? So like real quickly, like what are some of your favorite like post-contest strategies for a successful bodybuilding off season? Like what are some of like just your like main things that you look for, even with yourself? Like I think like being fresh out of prep, like things like sleep.
So if we're talking like straight out of prep, right? Don't fall into the trap of, I guess, falling in love so much with that show day body that you can't let it go. Because my worst rebounds post show have been when I've been terrified of gaining any extra body fat. Same. And they always ended in disaster. It always ended in that, because you'd restrict for so long, and then eventually you crack, and then that binge happens, and then the cycle starts. And then
don't you think that's like almost? Don't you think it's almost necessary? Like, okay, so here you are. Again, super experienced, highest level of this stuff. even you have gone through that. I've gone through that.
Absolutely.
I've not had a person on here or spoken to a person that hasn't gone through this. Like it happens to, it's like you have to go
start
through
at the top of our game.
Right.
You start as I was an amateur before I turned pro,
right.
and even as a pro, like I'm still learning. Yeah, I mean, we all go through this stuff, and I think, you know, if I could give any advice to new competitors that are just coming out of a show and they're worried about maybe they've been through that binge restrict cycle before, or they're worried about like I'm scared about gaining fat in the off season. My biggest piece of advice is actually get your calories back to maintenance as like instantly, straight away. You know, I've done like the very slow reverses, but you're still pretty freaking hungry, and it's still not enough. Just get me back straight away to a maintenance level, so at least I've got some food flexibility, I feel full, satisfied, I've got energy. Because the quicker you can start feeling that way, those binge tendencies aren't even going to rear their head at all, because you're feeling satisfied and you're able to fit in like a lot of these foods, which you haven't been able to for all of that time. So definitely getting your calories back to maintenance as quickly as possible. With regards to fat gain, I mean, you have to, right? And particularly, you know, if you're looking to optimize your off season, getting your body back to a healthy level of body fat is only going to speed up that recovery process.
Yeah, don't you agree? Kind of like start aggressive, and then as things progress along, then start to slow. Then start. I think
you need to expect in those first couple of weeks there's going to be some rapid weight gain. Yeah. Now that's going to be a combination of you've probably enjoyed a few post-comp celebratory meals. You've got to consider too, like water and sodium manipulation throughout peak week, show day. So, you know, I never really look at my show day weight as a real weight. It's a manipulated weight. I kind of look at what was my average weight before peak week, and that's kind of where I was.
Have you ever gone completely off the rails after show day? Like just like completely off the rails. Like I've gone completely off the rails.
I've definitely got no fullness hormones by the time.
Yeah, you cannot get full. Prep. It's like you can eat
my hunger
so
hormones
much.
Are completely dysregulated.
Yeah.
So have I eaten for a small army? Yes. But that's me on a daily basis anyway. I post those like full day of eating reels every now and then, and even my clients come in, they're just like, how the hell do you pack that much food in? And I'm like,
yeah, but is your NEAT super high? Like, are you super like fidgety and super kind of like just like moving around a lot?
Look, a quiet day for me is 10,000 steps. I do not have to try. I don't have to try for 10,000 steps. So I am on my feet a lot. I've never been. I don't have a crazy high metabolism. I'm not special at all. I do train
very hard.
Right. Not as much at the moment, and that has actually been reflective in my macros so far. I haven't been able to push them nearly as high as what I have been able to in the past. Like, they're still good, they're still respectable, but we actually had to pull them back a little bit because I was gaining a little bit too quickly. But in a normal scenario, I train like a freaking animal because I love it. I am on my feet a lot just as a coach, and I just tend to be like a high energy kind of person.
I didn't know that. See, I did not know that about you. I didn't know that you, like, when you said you were high stress and high, like, I didn't. That's the thing. We know each other from squares that you see on Instagram. Like, that's all good, but you can't, it's hard to get to know a person, like get to know their personality, like how they work, like through Instagram, which is why, like, I think these conversations, like, people can see and hear, like, oh, okay, like there are some normal people that are doing this stuff too. Like, it's not,
my
Instagram
feed is me like 1% of the time.
Right, right, right.
Look, I do. I
Exactly.
try to post more like training videos and stuff, and then the training videos, like they are legit my training sessions. I don't
Yeah,
post them as often because I do the same shit every week. I
that's
don't know.
what it is
Honest
though.
to God,
Like,
I don't know how
yeah,
some of these influencers come up with like they're posting like carousels. I'm like, do you actually follow a program, or is it
right.
just you go in and go, I'm going to train legs today and just do a bunch of random
Try like
exercises
every exercise, like all this
because I
random,
follow
like
the
weird
same
stuff.
program.
Yeah,
It's like some of my programs I follow for 16 weeks. The exact same thing. If I'm still
yeah.
progressing, I'm not going to change it.
Right. I think
So
it's detrimental to start changing things around. When things are
definitely,
going well,
definitely.
like you could run the same program arguably indefinitely. Like you could totally
Mm,
run the
mm,
same training program for a very long time.
yeah,
And so,
absolutely.
and I think there's a lot of benefits to that. So I think like once you start changing things up for the sake of
Mm.
changing things up, I
Yeah,
only think it
for
serves to
the
hurt
sake
your,
of, I think
yeah.
the more advanced you are, the I feel like the longer you can draw a program out, right?
Mm-hmm.
Definitely, when you're very new to training, your body adapts really fast, so
Mm-hmm.
your programming kind of has to keep up with that. Um, but as you start to progress in your training career, you can start to afford to drag those programs out much longer, and it's not until I don't know, maybe you just need to switch things up for more mental stimulation, or maybe, I don't know, like a certain movement just isn't feeling right for you anymore, or you've hit a true strength plateau, like a true strength plateau, not just oh, I didn't increase my weight from last week, therefore I've plateaued. No, I mean like
Right.
you've gone for weeks and you can't freaking increase the
Right.
weight or
Right.
do
Right. Which does happen.
then you'd look to manipulate the reps or the tempo or change up,
Right.
to a different
Right.
variation or
Right.
whatnot. Um, yeah, so yeah, I think where a lot of people fall into the traps, they feel like, your program must change every month. No, it doesn't.
Well, I think that's because what they see on Instagram too, because they do see
and
people changing this, doing like you said,
but
carousels,
even but
having all these
even
different
even
things.
coaches, like, so there was a I mean, I've worked for studios in the past where it was like every 4 weeks you had to change the client's program. It was like, but why?
That's
Like
like
they
to show
still
that you're
they
providing
didn't
value or something.
they well, I guess, it was in their mind, oh, because the clients get bored.
Right.
Well, this is a fucking boring, like it's
That's
doing the same shit over and over. That's how you become
yeah.
skillful at something, right? And if it's not mentally stimulating enough for you, then well, like perhaps we need to look at your
Right.
motivations and your goals and have a chat about like what is it like, why are you really here? Because yeah, to become great at anything, you've got to stick with it. It's day in, day out, practicing the same skills, mastering those skills, and doing it for a long time.
It's like what's the saying?
Like a lot of
The mother of all skills is like repetition. Or
yeah,
repetition
yeah,
is
something like
yeah,
that.
something like that.
I think impatience is probably the downfall of a lot of
Yeah.
people,
Yeah.
and
See,
athletes.
you
So
got to be really
whether
good at doing boring the same. That's something we didn't talk about, like
yeah,
that goes with these extremes. Is
mm,
as extreme as it may seem, it's so not. It's so the
mm,
opposite. It's so boring. It's so monotonous.
mm,
It's simply
mm-hmm,
doing the same things over, hitting the same macros, sleeping,
yeah,
getting your rest, drinking
eat,
water,
train,
training
sleep,
hard,
repeat.
repeat. Like that's what it is. And then letting that compound over like a decade. And then
Yeah,
like that's what
yeah,
and that's what happened. So it's like
yeah.
all a lot of the stuff is very like super repetitive. And so that's also
Mm,
something that we should kind of throw in as like a little bonus is like doing if you do want to be like successful with optimizing your physique, then
mm,
understanding that it's boring. It
mm.
takes repetitive doing the same things every single day, day in, day out.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
it takes a long freaking time.
yeah. But like we say, it's boring, but when you're again, this comes back to tracking and measuring your progress, right?
Yeah.
Because when you're seeing progress, that's motivating. That's not
Yes.
boring. I
Right.
love seeing my lifts go up every week. I don't care that it's the same
Absolutely.
lift. But if I'm seeing better performance and improvement, and then that's that's translating to changes in my physique, which, for me as a bodybuilder, that is the goal.
Mm-hmm.
It's not to be the strongest person in the room, it's to have the best looking glutes, like,
Right. Yeah.
then I don't find that boring at all, because again, it's all being very clear on what the end goal is and why that's important to you. So I think, especially, we're at that time of year where we're thinking about our goals for the year ahead, setting, New Year's resolutions or what have you. Before you even, do that, get very clear on what it is you want to achieve, but why? Why is that important to you? Who suffers if you don't achieve that? How will you feel if you do achieve that? Where I think it's very easy to set a superficial goal of, I want to lose 10 pounds.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, cool. Why is that important? How will that make your life better? So it's really peeling back the layers and finding that deep emotional underlying reason as to why we want to do something, because it's that feeling that's what gets you through. When I'm doing a prep, it's not the thought of, I want to get to 56 kilos to step on stage. No, it's not about that. It's because I want to be my absolute bloody best. I want to blow them away with the improvements that I made, and I want to freaking win, because winning for me is it's motivating, it's rewarding, it's more than just having a six-pack.
Yeah.
Right.
Absolutely.
And it's that sense of achievement and knowing that I've given everything my all, I've left no stone unturned. That sense of accomplishment, that's why I do what I do, because I know that if I put myself in future Anna's shoes and I look back on this and know that I didn't give 100% in that moment, I can't live with that. So it's about what can you live with, really?
Well said. And also, when it comes to prep, like, it's not something to take lightly at all. Like, prep can be one of the most rewarding things, I think, that we could both agree. It's one of the most pleasurable, rewarding, intense experiences. You learn a lot about yourself, and if you can go through prep, like, that means you could do anything. Like, if you go through prep, like, it builds up
that same resilience that you can apply to anything in life. It's all about delayed gratification. It's all about pushing aside the things that you want to do in favor of like what you want most. It's making sacrifices, and if you want anything great in life, sacrifices have to be made. It takes a long fucking time, and you need to put in a lot of work.
Right.
But it's all worth it at the end. And that's prep in a nutshell, right? And you can apply that to your business and your career, or building a house, like whatever it is that you're looking to achieve, saving up for something amazing, that's buying a house, doing a big holiday, what have you. It's all those, it all comes back down to that mental resilience and delayed gratification.
Okay, so I have a question for you before we wrap up. So you mentioned New Year's and New Year's resolutions. Do you ever do a New Year's resolution? I don't.
No.
Okay.
Look, I have, like, over the years, I've sort of sat down and thought about my goals and what it is like I want to do, and but like in recent years, I get it's not as formal, not as structured as that.
Right.
Tell you what I did do this year, and I'm right into it now. I made my first vision board.
Okay.
And
all right.
Bloody worked, Mikey. It bloody worked.
Did it? Tell me about this.
Right. Well, right in the center, I had like first place, WBFF Australia Fitness.
Okay.
That was, so every day when I'm doing my hair and my makeup in the mirror, there it is, right there. There's other stuff up on there, like relating to like our business and some travel goals and little things like that. But like if we talk about prep, so not that there's anything magical about a vision board, but I think it just comes down to just having that goal always in the forefront of your mind.
Well, that
So
kind of
every day when
sounds
I
like,
woke up and I saw that,
yeah.
that started my mental process of going into train. There was that mental process of, you know, keeping to your meal plan, getting your steps in, giving your all during your training. So yeah, I'm loving the vision boards right now.
Yeah, so like that kind of sounds like it goes in line a little bit with what you were saying, like with your training process, because like you were explaining how you tend to envision things. So you're a very visual person,
Good
and
pickup.
so like you're envisioning glutes and holy shit, that's Anna. Like what the hell happened? How did she make all these improvements? So like you're picturing all this stuff. So the vision board, to me, that sounds like right in line with that. So that sounds like something that would be like a really good tool for you. I could see where, based on what you were saying, like that would work. I've never tried it, but I'm not, my motto is I'll try anything twice. So I'm open. I always stay open to everything. Like I have a very open mind, and I don't even care if it's a food. Like if someone and I'm like, oh, that food looks gross. Like, but if someone's like, no, trust me, it's good. I'm like, let's run it up.
Okay.
Like, let me try that. Like if someone, like, I like to stay open-minded. And then if I don't like something, I don't like it. And I just don't do it again.
Yeah.
So I've never done like a New Year's resolution. So, okay. So like if you were to do a New Year's resolution this year, what would your like New Year's resolution be?
Oh, well, initially it's getting my knee back on track.
Okay.
So I guess like if we're talking about competing, so I'm having the whole of 2024 off. So I won't go back on stage. I'd like to compete again in 2025. The first FMG Worlds is going to be held in Australia in 2025. So that is what I would like to aim for. So as far as like my athletic goals, then, you know, we're looking at making physique improvements. Again, as always, I need more quads. Always need more glutes. So
never-ending journey.
Changes, but to get to that, I've got to get through the knee recovery first. So it's get through the knee stuff and then commence that kind of off season. And then but I like to kind of break things down. So like I've got the big goal of like Worlds 2025, but okay, and I want to, you know, have a better physique when I get there. So what are the steps I need to take to achieve that? Okay, well, I need to start getting stronger on these lifts. I need to my aim is to get my calories, you know, up to a, you know, certain level. Stay on top of my sleep. So, you know, I kind of take the big goal and then I break it down into mini goals of like the day-to-day boxes that I need to check. So
how do you sleep? Do you how many hours of sleep do you usually get?
I'm usually a pretty good sleeper. So like on an average week, I usually get between 7 to 8 hours. I tend to be about like a 7.5.
Yeah.
This week, not so good. It's starting to get really hot here now.
Is it? Yeah, I've heard so.
Melbourne
I'm
is
jealous.
Like
it's
Melbourne weather is super crazy here, though. Like Melbourne is, you know, like today is meant to be like 30 something degrees, which I guess for you guys like 90 something Fahrenheit, I think.
Wow. Yeah.
But then like the weekend
humid, right?
It drops to like not a little bit of humidity around. We're not as bad as like up north in the tropics, but so Melbourne is more of a dry heat, but yeah, so it'll be like 39 degrees one day and then it'll drop to like 18 the next.
And sleep, it's so like when you're
crazy,
when you're going to sleep, like, and it's real hot too. There is nothing worse than that. Like you need it cold. Like you need to need it cold.
18 degrees, the research says.
Okay, so what's that?
Is meant to be optimal sleeping temperature.
Okay, so like Celsius. What's that by me?
What's that in Fahrenheit?
Because I like 68, 69 degrees.
That sounds about right, actually.
Yeah.
Pull out the trusty converter here.
Yeah, right.
Where are we? Temperature.
Like if it's any more than that, I start to like I need to blast that air.
So 18 degrees Celsius is 64 Fahrenheit.
Oh, wow. You know, that's pretty cold. Like
It's
I
pretty
could see
chilly.
that. Yeah,
Yeah.
right.
Mm.
Yeah, but I usually I've just lost my headphones.
Yeah, I know those things
Hang
are
on.
starting to and that is like the most obnoxious sound in the world when that thing starts chirping in your ears. But
Yep. Yeah.
Anna, I've had a really, really great time with this conversation. I am gonna have your social media all over everything, but is there anything in particular you'd like to promote, like your coaching website, Reform Health? Is there anything like any projects you got
Yeah.
coming out that we could talk about?
Oh no, nothing really got coming out. But otherwise, yeah, if we want to promote Reform Q, like Reform KEW, that's
Okay.
the suburb where we live in. So that's our business here. So it's the gym and recovery center. We've got like ice bath and infrared sauna and
I've seen you
two
doing
stories.
that ice bath. That looks brutal.
It's honestly, if you can survive a leg day, you can do the ice bath.
Yeah. Not too bad.
Yeah, so we promote Reform Q and then my coaching website, which is iamanna.com.au. That would
Okay,
be
great.
nice.
I will include all that. Well, I do hope you have an amazing holiday. Thank
Yes,
you again for
likewise.
coming on. Yeah, I'm so glad that I caught that time thing. Yeah.
All
Yeah.
good.
I'm
All
glad we were
good.
able to make it work. But I think that we talked about a ton of good stuff. And
Yeah, a
I
lot
think
of tangents. I hope they got some valuable things in there, but
that's what seemed to me, that's what it's all about, though. Like some of the most interesting stuff comes from those tangents. Like again, to me, like the stories, that kind of stuff, that to me is really interesting. I just think you could get the other stuff anywhere. Like throw a rock on the internet. You're going to find this is the stuff that makes it unique to you. And I think your audience, I mean, they're into you, right? So that's what they're going to want to hear.
I think that there'd be a few things in there that not even my clients know about. Because they saw like all the gut stuff, but I don't think I've ever told anybody that I thought I'd never compete again at one point.
Yeah, right. And that's, I mean, that's a real human thing. And also like that you swear a lot. So I
wasn't too bad.
No, I think I swear a lot. So I think I'm typically the one doing that. So all right, Anna. Well, thank you again.
Thank you so much.
We'll go ahead and we'll talk soon.
Chat soon. Thanks, Mikey.
Okay. All right. Bye, Anna.
Bye.